Being 7 o'clock, August 20th, I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. We have an acceptance of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thanks. You guys probably heard me earlier, but Tony Vignani's running late. He will be here half an hour, something like that. He wants us to get started without him. Having said that, are there any walk-ins? Don't see any. The only other change to the agenda are the discussion on the Lawson Green project is being taken off, as well as the discussion on the OPEB, trust fund investment. So those, if you're looking at the agenda, those will not be discussed tonight. And then the interviews, when we get to that point, we will interview the folks, but not vote them on tonight. Having said that, can I turn it over to Jim for the report of the town administrator?
Couple quick upgrades tonight. Fields at the high school, right now we are still on schedule. The track subgrade is 100% complete. The drainage work is continuing. The rebar has been set, and we started pouring concrete today for the foundation wall for the stands and the press box that will be on that stadium field. Tomorrow, the road that goes behind the high school past the field will be closed while we install a saw line. That'll be closed for a couple days. This is a good time to do it. The schools are aware. After that, next week, you'll see the installation of the perimeter drain. That's a drain about this high and that wide that goes around the outside of the football field, between the football field and the track, so people will actually be able to see kind of where that field's going to be, where the stadium field's going to be. We're waiting right now. The next big threshold or milestone is getting approved from National Grid for the electrical plant, because they need to trench across the parking lot. We need to get that done before school starts. Obviously, we're meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow, and we're hoping that's going to be good to go. That'll be the next big milestone to get that done before school starts. But as of right now, we are still on schedule for the track and field.
I just have one quick question on that. So for those that don't know, opening day for the field, football field is?
So the stadium field is scheduled to be available for the Thanksgiving Day football game. The entire project will not be done until next spring, which is the other two fields, but the stadium field under the contract will be available for the high school team to play their Thanksgiving Day football game. We're still on schedule for that.
Is that all you have?
I got more stuff, but
Oh, no, do you want to
Can I
jump
ask you
in
a
now?
question
If
about
you
this?
have questions.
Where are we with the design for the clubhouse, concession stand, lack of
we reviewed a couple of different options. We've given the architect the go-ahead to go back and do a full design. The cost was about $100,000 less than the prefab building, and that included all the materials inside. So even with the cost of the architect, we should be ahead. So she's in the process of providing drawings for the general contractor can give us a real bid as opposed to an estimate based on the drawings. But if anything, the cost should come down. She spec'd out granite countertops in the bathroom, which we probably won't go with. Some other, tile floors, which we probably won't go with. Some other things. So we think it's going to be in good shape by the time we get it.
Good. Thanks.
You have questions, right? Continue on, I guess.
Brown water, the battle continues. The special town meeting will be seeking $3 million in capital funds for pipe replacement. This pipe replacement will be targeted at those 2-inch galvanized pipes that Kevin has told you about that are located all over town. Those are in different neighborhoods and on side streets. They are not big enough to have hydrants or flushing gates on, so they cannot be cleaned by us. We think they're a significant contributor to the brown water in those areas that they're in, so we're going to go for those. We're also scheduling our next round of ice pigging, and we are finishing up the unidirectional flushing program, and that will take effect later in the fall when the water usage goes down, as long as our reservoir levels hold up, which right now we're in good shape. So we should have plenty of water this fall to do a very aggressive flushing program throughout the system.
Can Sean McCarthy rattle off the streets off the top of his head, or if not, okay?
Now, I know one of them where I was talking about is foam.
Okay.
Down by Oceanside. Foam is one. They're small streets all over the place, Sean.
Okay.
But those lines cannot be cleaned, and they are chronic areas of brown water complaints. So we have Concom and Planning Board approval for the green sand filter. So they're doing a couple more design things on that. That'll go out to bid this fall. Probably later on, November, early December, we find is the best time to bid the water projects. and we should be in the ground in that in the spring. About a year, 18 months, Sean, for the construction, about a year, 18 months for the construction.
I had a question about the home filtration systems that we discussed at the last meeting. What is the status of that? Has any work been done on trying to figure out?
Kevin's on vacation this week, but we've been talking about what the parameters would be. That's kind of where we're stuck on. How would you determine what is a chronic problem?
Right.
Who's going to make the final determination that it is chronic? Is it going to be the water department? Is it going to be me? Or all those people that are coming in to see you at meetings, which we absolutely don't want. So that's kind of, the other part is mechanical. What do you want to do for a filter? What type of filter? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But that's kind of the part we're having a hard time getting around to.
Well, I for one would like to see it planned sooner rather than later because it's clearly a problem. I mean, I guess we're all hoping that it will settle down, literally settle down when this fall comes around, but we should be ready for next spring.
Yeah, we always see a big drop off in groundwater
Right.
complaints when the water usage goes down. I should have brought my bottle, I keep on my desk, I can show people actually what happens with the water. And then, if we can do a lot of flushing in the fall and then have water to flush again in the spring, we should see another big difference next year. This year, Front Street, we're just starting to get complaints down there now. I talked to Mark Cloud, who's the assistant superintendent, and he said it's been good, but they're starting to get complaints because the contamination from the other parts of the system is now starting to kind of creep back down to that area.
Yeah, well, 4 days for a friend of mine on Kent Street down by the church.
Yeah.
And I said, did you call it in? And she said, no.
And she said no.
And I said, please call it in or, send an email.
We could send someone out, we could do something, but if they're not calling it, it don't.
Yeah.
Also related to water, the boil water order for Hummerock that Marshfield had in place has been lifted. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, the EP has allowed Marshfield to rescind the boil water order. That is on our Facebook page, our website. The police put it on their website, and we did a reverse 911 to Hummerock to let the residents know that that boil water order has been lifted. That's been in place since last Tuesday, I believe. That's been in place. The wind turbine is back operating within its normal parameters. They had some people out the last week doing some software updates and things. It was shutting off unexpectedly for no apparent reason. That has all been fixed. So we are back on weather watch for the testing to look to see if we're going to be getting the conditions necessary to do the last, I believe, 2 tests on the windmill. Hopefully we get those done. Finally, the dredge project is on schedule out on South River. It is scheduled to be done in mid-September. We might even be a little ahead of schedule at this point. Seth and Steve Moan put together a very short, about 4 minutes, Seth?
Mm-hmm.
About 4-minute video where they actually interviewed the captain of the dredge and pictures of the dredging. It's up on Scituate TV. Anybody wants to take a look at it, but they should be done by mid-September.
Online or on cable as well?
It's on
Just
cable
online?
and no, both. Yeah, you can check our YouTube page.
I was going to say it's on YouTube.
You got it.
That's what I have tonight.
That's it? All right, 7:15, we have a recognition of a town employee that's been in the town for 25 years. Pleases me to say, these are the fun things, these are the great things. I thank you, and everyone who works for the town very much, especially those that have been here as long as you have, Tony. That's Tony Sneed of our library, and Jess, if you'd like to say a few words, feel free. Come right up.
So first, I want to say thank you to you guys for doing this. Thank you, Tony. It's rare that people get acknowledged for their work, and Tony is certainly deserving. I don't know how many of you know, but Tony is not only instrumental to our library, but she was actually instrumental to setting up the whole library network. She helped with the organizational aspects, and she also did a lot of the original cataloging just to get our entire now 32-member library network started. She was also really critical in writing the building project grant for which the town received $5 million in funding for the new library. During the construction process, she was my right arm. She ran the day-to-day operations of the library. She helped organize all of the moves to and from. She planned for the new library, she really was absolutely critical for that. And not only that, but she's a supportive colleague, she always offers good advice. She has great insight into library issues, and she finds new ways every day to help me and to help improve the library. So I just really want to thank her for her service, and I hope there's another 25 years left.
If I could just say one little thing, and then I'll open it up to the board, and we might have something to repeat for your 25 years of service, that having lived through that construction project and being on the public buildings committee, anybody involved in the library that's still there today is, you know, a lot of people don't realize it, but, you know, I mean, you turned Pier 44 into a fantastic little temporary library. I can't imagine the work that went into that, doing from saving the town a ton of money and keeping them all rolling. I was thinking about it today. It's, that was a very difficult project to have it rebuilt, but it is, everyone in town should be very proud of that building, really should. It's an anchor of this town. Thank you very much for being such a big part, I appreciate it. I'll open it up to the other members.
Sure, I'd just like to thank you very much. We all love the library and all the wonderful people who work in it, and it's such a wonderful community asset, and thank you for everything you've done. And especially that network, that's an amazing feat to have gotten a network like that together, so thank you very much.
I too want to say thank you for your vision. It sounds like you're actually one of the visionaries there in the building that have really gotten us to this great point, and I didn't realize that, so very grateful for all your service and all of your great vision to improve that library. It is beautiful, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I get to be last because I'm very fortunate that I have gotten to work with Tony for a number of years through the library project and my other involvements. And something Jessie hasn't said is her professionalism and strength and just you're always there and always steady. And when things were off the rails, we always knew that you would be there holding us down. So I get the privilege of presenting the gift from the town of Scituate, and thank you personally for being there. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and hope to see you at 50 years. Moving on is, let's see, is Karen Allstead here? We have an outdoor entertainment permit for 60 Old Oaken Bucket Road. Hi Karen, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Any stuff here? If you don't mind giving us a little details of what you're planning on doing and when and type of entertainment or music and that sort of stuff.
So we have a deck, and we're going to have Dr. Ellis come and play on the deck for between 7 and 11, adults only. My child will be at someone else's house. And just, close out the summer. This beautiful summer, we've had this beautiful thing.
I will ask, in case it's not in here, it could very well be you've notified your abutters, your neighbors.
I've actually invited them all.
Okay.
So, and it said it was an invitation / warning.
Okay.
And so they all said we're in, so, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board?
I have one.
Okay.
I don't know your property or the
Yeah.
deck. Is the deck an elevated deck or?
It's elevated by about 3 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I attended a party where that didn't work so well, and it was a highly elevated and people were dancing.
Oh, no, this is all, yeah, the place where people will be is actually only 3 feet off the ground.
Okay.
So, and it's safe and code and everything, so.
That's good, because they're a great thing.
Any others? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to grant an outdoor entertainment permit to Karen Alston for a live band on 9/1 from 7-11 at 60 Old Oaken Bucket Road.
I have a motion, can I have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
we'll have fun.
Thank you so much.
Rain date, I forgot to ask you.
Oh, no.
All right, okay. if
Rain or
it's
shine.
Rain or
I'll just
shine.
move him in
All
those
right,
areas.
good. We'll have fun.
Great, thanks so much.
The next up is another outdoor entertainment for 52 Oceanside Drive on September 20th. Caratonda.
I am not Kara.
Yeah.
I am Kara's right-hand woman, as you call myself. I'm Mary Ellen. I run the River Shed. I've been here before you guys before. We are hosting a songwriters festival. The 21st and the 22nd will be held at the restaurant. The 20th is merely for a lot of our local musicians that we already hire and have play with us, as well as a few invited guests. She is hosting the songwriters themselves who are flying in from Nashville at that address. She's cleared it with the homeowner. We have sent out letters to the abutters. The only one that had a question about anything has been taken care of. They just had a question about parking. It's all acoustic music. There's no amplifiers involved or anything like that. And the neighbor the abutter who is concerned about that, there'd be a maximum of 10 to 12 cars. And there are also people that Kara knows who have offered their driveways as well. It's going to be early. It'll start at about 6 o'clock, go till about 9 o'clock. And that's it.
All right, okay. That was my first thought, was parking.
Yes.
It is after Labor Day, but still it is.
Of course.
It's tight. Any questions or comments? Anyone?
I just want to confirm your time, because on the request it says 7 to 10, so do you
So
need
I'm sorry, I should say 6 o'clock is where we're inviting people, just the people to have appetizers and things like that.
So the
So,
music starts at 7?
correct. Yes.
Perfect. Sounds lovely.
Okay. All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to grant outdoor entertainment permit to Kara Tondor for a private event at 52 Oceanside Drive on September 20th, 2019, with songwriters performing with acoustic guitar.
Motion, and do I have a second? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Thank you
Have
very
fun.
much, guys.
Thank you.
Back to
Thanks for
back
coming
up.
in. And it looks like the last one is for 4A Blue Hill Road from, let's see,
Try to pronounce it.
Lynn Hersey?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Sounds like you're here. Come on up, tell us about it. Okay, so 4 Booth Hill is right on the corner of Country Way Booth Hill.
Yes.
Okay.
I just recently opened up a craft shop here at 4A Blue Hill Road.
Okay.
And I'm going to be having a Elvis impersonator. Oh, I would like to have an Elvis impersonator there to sing between 10 and 5, not the whole time, roughly, 20 minutes, and then promoting the different businesses in the area, like Mary Lou's, Tara's Kitchen, Stacy's Stitchery. He'll come in, take a little bit of break, go back out for another 20 minutes, do the same thing all over again, come back in, so you will be taking breaks, so it's not a constant hours on end singing.
What type of, he has a guitar, it must be some type of amplifier and matching?
Yes, he has a 600 watt and a 1,000 watt. He will be using the 600.
Okay.
I will make sure that he uses the 600.
I don't know, somewhere I saw something, you might have done this, probably didn't know you needed her, so.
Yes,
All right.
I did not know that because our landlord, or my landlord, told me, as long as you're on my property, I'm giving you permission. And I do have a copy of the abutters list, or notification, and his signature right on, giving permission.
Yeah, I would see this, all right, okay. All right, well, thank you.
Did you need this?
No, that's right, you're Lori.
Thank you. And we would like to do
And
this,
you'd like this for, you have some dates chosen,
yes,
so like once a month.
once a month from September through December.
What day is it on? Like what's the,
Sundays.
Sundays,
It's all
okay,
Sundays.
sorry.
Okay.
We wanted to make sure there was Sundays to try and bring more business in.
Are all the stores open on Sunday? Sorry.
No, go right ahead. I should've said
I know
it.
Mary Lou's is opened, and I'm open. I know Stacy Stitchery, she's supposed to be closed, but she does do reading classes, but I'm not sure if it's on Sundays or not.
Karen, will-
Yeah, as much as I appreciate that you need to and want to promote your business, I have some concerns about the length of time on a Sunday that you're asking for. I would consider it more reasonable for it to be an hour. More than that, if you're not an entertainment venue or a restaurant, I find it personally a little excessive. And the amplification issue, we ask a lot of times of our applicants, is it going to be amplified? And if it is, that creates yet another level of disturbance, if you will, for the neighbors. Because you are not just in a commercial district, you're also in your residents around and people live in apartments. So I would question the length of time that you're proposing, especially on a Sunday.
Even if he's
The day
only
of rest.
singing like 20 minutes and then taking a break for 20 minutes and then singing for 20.
Yeah, I think it's too long for a business that is not in the entertainment business, and you're not a restaurant or a cafe.
Okay.
So that's just my personal opinion. And I know there have been a couple of complaints that we've received.
Which we didn't realize we needed a permit.
That's understandable. This I've never seen anything like this. Usually it's an event, it's a
Right,
party, or it's a
exactly.
restaurant, like Karen said, it's indoors. Yeah, it might be summertime outdoors, but this is a little bit different. Laura, do you have any comments or thoughts about?
Yeah, I
the
actually
audience?
concur with that thought, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. is a long stretch for that type of entertainment in that area, for many of the same reasons that Karen just mentioned. Again, I think she brought up a lot of valid points because it's not a restaurant or an entertainment venue. Is there any reason why you can't tighten it to 1 hour or so? I'm just trying to connect all the dots.
We could. I was just trying to make it a broader area and time-wise, so you wouldn't be out there all the whole time, and just like increments of 20 minutes at a time.
And can you share with me again, what's the nature of your business? I'm just trying to connect again.
It's
Connect the
handmade,
Elvis and,
it's handmade crafts,
okay.
like cutting boards, soft scrubs, bath bombs, soaps, jewelry.
Gotcha.
What are your thoughts about, and this is just mine, and I haven't talked to anyone else, if we gave you 1 or 2 dates, just to see what happens with the neighbors? Given any thought to that? If we granted September or October, and I throw this out there to the other members, they may be short of the time. Just
We can do that.
If there are any other questions, I might just see if there's any thoughts, comments from the audience. That's all right. Anyone have any thoughts or comments? I know you, Penny, could you just say your name and address for those that might not?
In Scott Pike, 8 Booth Hill Road, you did receive a letter today from Stacy's Stitches, and there are a lot of tenants in that end of the village. There's 12 apartments, and Stacy, both her tenants, they both work nights, one's a chef, one's an EMT, and they usually work Saturday nights, and she has complained about it numerous times that it was way too noisy. It is loud. I happen to know the uphill side. I personally, I can take the once a month, but the 11 or 10 to 5, that's just, no, there's too many residents right there. You don't realize it, but there's all apartments. In that one little corner, there's 12 apartments. And there's another fellow, Steve, that lives across the street over Gaffey's old funeral home. Steve works nights for the state, and he has not enjoyed it at all when it was being done before the permit. So it's, for 4th and Scituate, when they had their grand opening, something like that, but that's an ongoing in the village. There's a lot of unhappy people about it.
The other thing I can say is, there's one I'm gonna say is, Ian?
Ann Burbine, 10 Hillcrest Road. I own a grocery shop, and it is noisy. It is, now, grant you, I'm not open on Sundays, sometimes I'm there in the morning, but it is loud. When it has happened in the past, and there are all kinds of tenants. I'm not sure what the point is for a craft business, for fall for Scituate, as Penny pointed out. I certainly understand that. But as far as, or when we do the Santa stroll in December, but any other time, I really have a problem with it.
Usually, applicant comes in with something like this, you wanna make your neighbors happy, so, you know, there might be some that want it, but someone's spoken out against it. Here, it wasn't happy, haven't. We did receive this letter, and I didn't put the connection together, but she's one of the other brothers that's against it. I mean, I applaud you for thinking outside the box. It's, I can see their thoughts about, you know, when there's a draw in those situations, you know, when they do one of those special events. My thought was maybe try one day, shorten the hours, and then you can see. And then if we get complaints, even if we approved every single weekend, then there'd be, you know, and we got complaints. And then you'd be coming before us again and say, well, this kind of cannot continue. So I'll open it up to the board if someone wants to make a motion to modify it.
I have a question, I have another question.
Okay.
You mind? Do we know what Fall for Scituate is? What
It's
weekend it is?
October 20th, and I might
Oh, because
add,
that's not even on there as one of the options.
no, and I might add that Mark D'Onofrio, I saw him last night at EDC, and he was saying, or CPC, he was saying that he could hear that all the way up to his house. And he's up by, I think that's Wade Street. I mean, this is really, really loud.
No,
I mean, I have to shut my window.
Karen?
I 100% want to draw attention and business to North Scituate. I think which one of the commissioners doesn't see that. But I, just to echo a little bit of what my colleagues have said, an outdoor entertainment permit usually is either a one-off or an event-driven thing, and usually not on Sunday. And I wonder about the Sunday also, just because a lot of stores aren't open, and if it's to draw attention, I'm having a little trouble with that as well. I think I would encourage you to maybe think of a less intrusive way to draw attention to the store. And I'm not super comfortable with approving this, given, especially since we've already had complaints about it. That's where I'm coming from, but obviously you're creative, so I have no doubt that we'll, and certainly working with the other merchants in that area, they're trying really hard to bolster that area, so we'll certainly support that in any way, but I'm not comfortable with this particular way.
What would the board like to do? I mean, you don't have October 20th listed, and maybe there's a reason why.
I did not know,
Okay. So maybe that would, you know, I'm just throwing that out there, maybe that would be, or, you know,
they already have an attendance study with the fall.
so she could not,
I was just gonna suggest that she connect with the Fall for Scituate committee. You know, that's what I would suggest, is that if she could, if you're open to that, is to connect the Fall for Scituate committee, so you're in line, and that gives you an opportunity to scout their idea as well. Run that committee, but again, we would approve any of their outdoor entertainment as well through that manner. Yeah, just having a little problem with it too. We don't usually have a lot of folks speak out for entertainment permits, as you could see, the other folks that were here earlier, so that does raise a little bit of concern for me as well when that happens.
how about if we don't take any action at all, and I'm just, again, just throwing this out there, maybe you go back, talk to the business owners and chamber and whomever. I don't want to discourage you from doing something you want to do, but maybe try to talk to them and fine tune it and come before us. I just throw that out there. I see you nodding, you have maybe an agreement to that. How's the board feel about that?
Yeah.
All right,
Great idea.
okay. Well, thank you very much for coming for us and giving us the ideas, and if you need help connecting with those people, just let us know, let Lorraine know.
All righty,
Ian's kind of shy, but, you know, I think you'll find it.
all righty.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
And everyone go check out the new shops.
Just ready to start the interviews, just in time.
Perfect. Sorry I'm late, everybody.
You are late.
All right.
We're conducting this in Italian.
Yes. We go. Okay, so looks like Sean is cruising through this. This is perfect. And we're on the interviews now. And is Betty here? Betty, how are you? Long time no see. All right. So you are here for the Beautification Commission? No?
No, that's not.
For the Citrus Cultural Council?
Oh.
Okay, that is the, I think the first time I've ever seen that.
And for the Scituate Sister City project?
That's a renewal, though, right?
Right.
Yeah. Actually, I've been on, I'm the secretary of it, but I don't know if I'm officially on it lately. I was originally, but I don't know.
I think you're on the overarching.
That's right, the main, the board doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Sister City is 32.
It's not this Sister City, it's the 501c3 overarching
Oh, the
Sister
old-
City.
oh,
It's
okay.
not
So Central Cultural Council?
The Citrus Cultural Council is the one that, I used to be on that,
Okay.
and I was on it when we applied and became a cultural district.
Right.
And then I had to get off because my term was expired, and then they just asked me to leave.
It's tab 21.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Okay, and there you go.
You almost put you on beautification.
We've been wondering why you were planning the islands.
So tell us a quick, Laura, as to why you want to be back on this commission.
Okay, because I'm connected with a lot of the arts associations in the area and some of the music programs and that sort of thing. And when we get the applications, I'm familiar with some of the people applying, and I'm familiar with the schools and what activities would be good. And so I feel like I'm qualified to help me make decisions on this. And the government just gave an extra $2 million to the cultural council, not Scituate. So we'll get a little bit more this year.
Good. Any questions?
I would put Betty on any committee she wanted to be on. So maybe not zoning board of appeals. But I can't think of a better person to work on any of these committees, so.
I have a question for Lorraine. There's 7 renewals. Have they all been approached, or do we know if anyone's?
I'm still waiting for people to get back to their renewals, but there are openings, because they can have up to 22 people. So there's plenty of that for Betty.
Oh, that's
Did everyone hear that? 22 people can be on that
Well,
committee?
you know, that's a little difficult to manage, 22 people.
Yeah, it is.
There's plenty of space for Betty, and as can I, so.
Betty, is there an area that you like to focus on to help, to grant within the different cultural art areas that come before the council?
Basically, what we do is we review what they have applied for, but I do speak to different entities that are looking for funding for that sort of thing, and so I encourage other groups to apply for funding.
Okay.
That I think are appropriate, including the Scituate Sister City project, and we have the International Film Night and that sort of thing, so. There are other groups in Scituate that, but a lot of people are from outside of Scituate that are looking for money to do projects within Scituate.
Okay,
So
great.
we look at them all.
I concur, and I would put you on.
Betty, great, thank you for applying. I think, like you said, there's 7 people that are possibly renewing, but it's up to 22 members, and I don't know that we're going to put that many on there, but it seems like there's about 10 or 11 on there now.
And just mentioned before Betty came here, we'll interview but not voting tonight.
Okay.
And hang around.
Thanks, Betty.
Okay. The next person on the list is Suzanne Hoffman.
Yes.
How are you? Come on up. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So you want to be on the Economic Development Commission?
Yes.
Good. Tell us why. First, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Susanna Hoffmeister, and I'm living in North Scituate for the past 13 years. And I'm one of the members of North Scituate, the Friends of North Scituate Village. So we are very active to try to get some, revive North Scituate and bring some economic development there. But I think not only North Scituate, I think Scituate as a town should, rethink how to do economic development in the harbor, everywhere. And I have a scientific background, so I love to do research, and I love to just, show it the fact, look at the facts, see what works for other communities. Maybe it will work here too, just to, look with fresh eyes on this.
Great. What's your board background?
I have a PhD in biology, so I was international project management leader in a biotech company in Munich. And then my husband decided he needs some more experience in the international field, so we moved to the US. And that was planned for 2 years, and now we are 14 years later, we're still here. So I think we're not going back there anytime soon, but we love it here. So we raise our kids here in the community, and we really love Scituate. So.
Great. Have you been to any of their meetings?
Yes.
Oh, good. And what have you found?
I like that they are all really pro-North Scituate and pro-economic development. I really like the vibe in the meetings and how they're thinking and how they're working, and I think I could contribute with my views and my ideas to that.
Karen, any questions?
What do you think the biggest challenge is outside of North Scituate? Because I think we've all recognized North Situate's got a problem, but
Yes.
where else do you think
I
that
think
we
we
should be
have
looking
empty
at?
stores in the harbor too. And the thing is that we should look at ourselves as a vibrant town. We have a lot of young people, and maybe we should shift some of the economic development to younger people too. Maybe, get more out of the full year and not only, out of the summer month where a lot of tourists come and, summer, people who live here for the summer. So I think we really have to rethink the whole development. I also would love to rethink the development of 3A. I know that the town of Scituate voted in 1965 or something like this that we should not develop 3A. But I think we should rethink. We pay with our taxes for our schools, for everything. Other communities have a lot of big stores who help to pay for that, for those expenses. And now we have to see what we do with our aging elementary schools. So we are thinking of rebuilding Hatherley or building a new building, and we again have to pay with our taxes for these expenses. And I think more development could help the whole town to stem those infrastructure expenses too. With the farm water and freshwater systems, we have to invest in a lot of different infrastructure institutes, and we need that money.
Well, Penny just had a minor stroke, but.
I know, it's
Yes, I did.
I just think we should discuss it, we should look at every aspect and see what we can do to make it better.
Thank you, first of all, for stepping forward. And secondly, are there any towns that you have visited, during your 13 years here in the area that you think would be a good model for us to adopt, in your travels, or even your international travels, obviously, coming from Germany,
Right.
probably.
Yes. If you just look at our neighboring towns like Norwell, it's doing very well with economic development, or even if you look at Cohasset Village, the little stretch, I always see that and then see our North City Village and think, oh my God, there's all this potential, with the little bars and eateries, and we could have, people going there. And when we have our meetings with our friends of North City Village, we meet in Cohasset to eat out there because we don't have anything to go in North City. And that's, I think one of the really big problems. And then we also see that Cohasset has Shaw's and Stop and Shop and all this. I mean, we decided not to do that, but I mean, to see that they're doing so well and we are not doing that well, I just think, you don't have to go far to see what you could do differently. And I would love to go more deeply into it and see why is it working for them, why maybe it's not working for us, and adapt, to different modeling.
Karen, anything?
No, thank you so much for stepping up and hearing in for it. You've got an interesting background, and of course the friends have been very, their input has been very valuable to the ECRA.
Yeah.
This question might have been asked, and I'm sorry, because I was trying to find what Jason's lane was. I thought I knew where every street was, but it's off either 3-ring road or something. It's not a 3-ring road. But anyway, short of sewers coming to North Situate, what do you think could be done in the village until, I'm going to say until sewer comes? And I'm sorry if someone already asked that.
Well, I'm one of the persons who think we can do something before the big sewer question is solved. And I also think we should have more options with the sewer solvage. We think of doing it with Cohasset, using the South Main Street. Then we have the other model where we go up to A. That is all very costly, and I think it will take a lot of time. And so we don't know even if Cohasset agrees to do it. I mean, we are dependent on them and their decisions. So why don't we use the sleeve or the pipe which is already running down the train tracks and connect only the village, only the businesses to our treatment facility and make the capacity, free up the capacity. And I know there are different areas in Scituate where we try to do that. And there is some resistance, but I think we really have to take action to help North City Village to get to that state where we can have restaurants, where we can have eateries. Because with the sewage system right now, or the non-sewage system, we can't even open up businesses where we had an office before, and now we want to have a retail store. And the Board of Health says, oh, you can't do that, because then you have to get a new Title V. And so Mono couldn't survive, because they only could use half of the space they had to pay rent for a retail store, and the other half they could use as a storage space, but they couldn't use the whole space. And I just think we could do more to help businesses, even to see that maybe the usage of office space and the septic system usage is not so different from the retail space, I would say, so that maybe the Board of Health could say, be more flexible, and say, it's okay, we can do that without a Title V, because we all know, I think no business owner would survive a Title V inspection. I think that's why they can just stay like they are right now. So.
Can I ask one other question? Because I like your answer. So, are you concerned at all, in Scituate I don't think is alone, but Front Street, people come up to all of us, that stores it, that stores it. And I think I saw it first with Marshall on 139. But yet you see what's going on in Hanover where the old, the bond side was, okay? And I thought those buildings looked pretty good until I see what's going on there now. Or Hingham, the shipyard. So, any thoughts on trying to, what are your thoughts on that? People, 30, 40 years ago, they all left the small shops and went to the malls.
Yes.
Now they're dying.
Yes.
So,
I mean,
I know that the Hanover Mall is trying to revive the whole area because they want to try the dual usage, so they want to put apartments on top, and then business underneath. I think that is the model for the future, that you put people right on top of the business because then you have the people walking up to the business. I think that is definitely something we could look into. With the harbor, we have a completely different problem because I think we will be underwater in the next 20 years. My son did a study with his school, and that was really discouraging what the tides will look like in 20 years. And from my house, I have a view of the marsh, which is beautiful, but I have lake views every 4 weeks now because the high tides and the astronomical tides are that big now that the marsh is just a big lake. So I see that the water is rising definitely in the past 15 years or 14 years. So with the whole harbor area, we have to rethink what can we do, to make it sure that it does not flood in the next years, or should we move the whole thing, to upper grounds and rethink our development there. And that is a huge project, and I think that's a project for you guys to really think in the future. There will be a big problem. So, and for the empty store sites, I see the same thing in the other towns, and I never thought that Sylvia got to see it close, that broke my heart to see her go, and I don't know why, if the business was really bad or if she just had enough, I'm not sure. I loved her shop, and I was a regular customer there, but I thought her shop was perfect, perfect situated. She had a lot of stuff I bought and brought over to Germany. All my friends loved the Scituate signs and the seaside knickknacks. And for the seaside town, I think her shop was perfect. So that was really exciting.
Great, that, you asked the question that I was going to ask, it's not just North Scituate, it's the town in general, and vacancies in Harvard as well, and something like that. I think you bring a good perspective to the board, and the committee is a very active committee right now, and they've actually done a very good job, looking at things over the years. It's such a big concept, it's hard to make small changes, and I think they're working on that. But right now, there's one opening, and there's one renewal, and there's about 5 or 6 people looking for that spot. So I don't think we've met all of it yet, but we will certainly take into consideration. I think you bring, like I said, a good perspective, and we'll get back to you as soon as we know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in. All right, moving right along, Bob Brand. Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. So you're here for the Historic Commission.
If there is an opening, I wasn't sure there was an opening on that or not, because it was never listed. But when I looked on the town page, there's one less member on there now.
Okay. Have you been to any of their meetings?
I've tried not to miss their meetings over the last year and a half.
So you've been there?
Yes.
It says tab 11, but I don't...
It's 16.
16?
You may know I also put out the community preservation.
Right.
That was my initial, because I didn't know about if there was an opening on the historical commission.
Sure. So your preference would be the Historical Commission first?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a look at that real quick. So it says there's no openings.
Okay.
Doug Smith, none are up for renewal. 4.
There's a couple.
I'm sorry, there's 4 renewals.
Yep.
And just because you're up for renewal doesn't mean you automatically get that spot. So that's certainly up for discussion. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and then two associate, or 2 liaisons, 3 liaisons. Good. So tell us why you want to be on that commission.
Well, part of it is to try to keep my family standing in service to the community. My great-grandfather was highway surveyor for a number of years, back at the turn of the last century. And my aunt served as town clerk for 25 years, back in the, basically the 70s and 80s. I had moved into town 5 years ago, and I retired here, and I'm living in the same house where I would spend my summer vacation with my grandparents. And that was my dream when I was a kid and growing up, that I would someday be able to live in Scituate, because I just love Scituate so much. And I want to do what I can for the town to not keep it like it was, but to carry on the tradition of what the town was back 50 years ago.
Good, and what do you think you can add to the historical commission?
Well, to that commission, I can add, I'd like to think a common sense view. I don't have a degree in history. I don't have a degree in architecture to look at houses, okay? My closest thing to history right now is I am currently enrolled in BU, and I am going after my certification in genealogy. So I dig up family roots. But I think I would bring a common sense view to the board.
Good. I'll come back, but Sean, you want to?
I've known Bob for a couple of years since he's been back in town. For you folks who don't know where he lives, lives in Johnny Fitz's old house on the corner. And Johnny was always out there weeding. If you went down Stockbridge Road on the corner, everyone remembers that. The nicest guy.
He does a much better job than
Peggy knows who I'm talking about.
Johnny was my uncle.
So they.
I have no.
You went by there and saw, everyone went by and started fighting by
Next to Stevie's house.
So,
Is there a street name?
Stockbridge Road on the corner. Mara knows what I'm talking about, she said she
With a
did.
big pine tree in the front
Okay,
yard.
all right, okay. So, no, it does come from, in his, I thought it was, I don't, grandfather Bump Road, I know exactly what you're talking
No, not from front. John T. Fitz was my great-grandfather. He was the highway surveyor back
about. I thought you were
in
talking about.
1890s, 1900s.
All right.
Bob Brown is actually my first cousin once removed.
Yes. I'm sorry.
So your
That's
genealogy degree.
It's all confusing.
But no, I think Bob would be a great addition to this house.
Just one more, so you do go to a lot of the meetings for the commission?
Yes, the historic commission, yes, I do.
And you said that you'd like to bring a common sense view to it. Is there any, I will put you on the spot, but is there any decision in particular that you felt should have gone a different way based on
I
your?
think it was the last one they did, I forget exactly where it was, but I didn't quite agree with it. They passed it, but they gave them the permit for demolition, we didn't give them a stay.
The one you said?
Yeah, and that kind of took my head on, the one that voted no kind of took their head on it. But I think they had some ongoing contingencies with the people involved. Because I'm not afraid to look at the human aspect of it. If someone's got to tear down their house and it's 150 years old, they got to tear it down for financial reasons or health or something like that, I'm not going to refuse it, because the human aspect of it comes before, unfortunately, the historical aspect.
Karen?
Yeah, since there are no openings currently on the historical commission, my question would be, have you thought about volunteering to work in the town archives? Sounds like.
I currently volunteer, my wife and I do the bread run for the COA on Mondays.
Good.
On Fridays, I volunteer in the French bookstore in the library.
Okay.
And on Saturdays, I'm the old curmudgeon at the desk at the
I was
Historical
going to
Society.
ask you that. Are you
Yes,
the old
yes, I am the old curmudgeon.
It sounds like you're fully employed to me.
So,
Just being
I'm
the old
good.
curmudgeon, yeah.
well, we do babysit our bonus grandson 2-3 days a week.
Yes.
But I have ample time to, I honestly believe I have ample time to give on a committee or on a board, besides the other things.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a lot of detailed questions. I do know, I see your post, you're very enthusiastic about the Historical Society and trying to get folks interested in our historical structures, so I appreciate that. So I think really having that passion is important. It sounds like you have that, Bob. So I'd be interested to know if everybody, as we go through this process, to understand if everyone has confirmed whether or not they want to renew or not on this commission, because there are 4 people. So I don't see any yeses and nos, so I don't know if we need to follow up with anyone.
I'll be telling everybody's had their respond.
Okay, yeah, so that's all.
Okay, I would inform you, I would be, doing one tongue tied. I wouldn't mind being an alternate number on that.
Yeah, they do have an associate as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for stepping up. Doesn't sound like you do enough, so. Just kidding. You do a lot, so
My wife
thank
would
you.
say anything to get around the house.
Great, yeah, thanks for volunteering. I'd love to see the fact that you're actively involved, you like one of the meetings, you have an interest in the town, obviously a history in the town as well. And their charters is somewhat, constricted in terms of focus is probably a better word. So I think that's great. Once we find out what these people want to do, and then we'll decide whether we want to renew their things or put you on as well. But I would definitely say keep going on there, and if there's a room for an associate position, then we'll discuss that as well.
Don't forget, I don't put in community preservation.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about that for a quick second? Any questions on, what number is CPC?
11, I think.
11. So tell us why you want to be on CPC.
Well, that goes in line with, to me, with keeping the historical and aspect of the town. I don't want to call it quaintness, but, the way it was that you can never bring back. But to make sure that some vestige of that is always left. I have mellowed out on the development, and I used to be very opposed to the development, but I've mellowed out on that, and development is good for the town. We need to get some new folks in here, we need to get some new blood in the town, but we still need to not lose sight of our history and where we all came from. And I've noticed that some of the work that the CPC does involves the history, like the refurbishing of gravestones and things like that. And also, I'm a little interested in the culture of the town, although I don't show it too much. I know there's an Irish community and there's a Cabo Verdean community, but I never see too much about the English farming community that was here in the very beginning, in 1636. Then my family comes from a stock of farmers. That was Fitz Farm for the vegetables. Drive the horse and buggy up from Boston every morning. It was a farming community, and I like the heritage of it, and I like to keep the heritage of the neighborhoods intact. Yes. Without saying too much. And John Lamont.
Any other questions for the CPC concept?
No, good.
Second choice, first choice is historical, second is.
Okay, it sounds like the CPC is far,
Yeah, I know.
it's much bigger than that, but it
Yeah.
sounds like your passion is more on the historical side of things. And
Oh, I'll admit to that.
yeah, so I think that sounds to me anyways like a benefit. So, great, well, thank you for coming in, and when we vote, we'll let you know.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Is Rob Buckle Gillis here? You can make it up, Rob, but. So this is number 14, tab 14. Thanks for coming in, Rob.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and then a little bit about why you want to do this?
So I am, sorry, recovering conservative. I am relatively new to Scituate. I've been here about 5 years. I'm not originally from New England. I'm actually originally from New Orleans. But I do love it up here. I've been living in New England for 12, 13 years now. I have a degree in social work, and most of my career has been working with seniors in some form or fashion. So I worked in hospice for a very long time. I worked in volunteer management in that aspect. And I currently am the director of a new adult day health center that my company is opening in Brockton that will be focused on people with dementia and other memory care issues. And it's a day program where people come to be so that they can be safe and taken care of while their families are working and doing their thing. I saw the Council on Aging as an opportunity to kind of give something back to the community, since I don't work here. But that's really why. It's like I've worked with seniors for a very long time, worked with senior centers in a lot of the capacity of what I do now, and thought it would be an opportunity for me to do something.
Great, and I see you're also an HR manager?
I don't know, I must not give you. The company I work for, yeah, so the Mentor Network I still currently work for, I actually recently changed positions. So I moved out of the regional team as an HR person, and I'm now a director at the new center.
Okay.
That's not good for an HR person to be the wrong resume.
It's okay, you have a lot of appropriate skill sets.
And you get the cluster stuff on. So this is a very popular committee right now because it's the new senior center. I think there are a couple openings and about a dozen people. Yeah, 2 openings and 2, 4, 6, only 7 people apply. So that's
Not a bad problem.
Yeah. So, but your skill set falls right in with many of the other people that I think sounds like a good mix. Karen,
Just, have you had an opportunity to talk to any of the current members or just talk about their priorities, get a sense of what's going on so far
I
inside the building?
I am not. My mother-in-law goes and gets bread. However often they do that, with lots of bread. But I read that she gets the newsletter, so I stay on top of it, but I have not actually talked to anybody about that.
It's going to be a busy year.
Yeah.
On the meeting, their meetings, once, no, you're able to, make the meetings, did you just?
Yeah,
ask
so
that? I'm sorry.
it's a good point for me, because the Council on Aging, for some reason, meets at 5:30. Is that a problem as far as attendance?
Yeah, because
No, I can scream them to wheels.
Yeah, no, that's not an issue. Because we do daycare, the last person will be leaving around 4-ish. So, and I'm not the only person there too, so I can always leave if I need to.
Is there anything from your experience that you feel would be useful, the work you do today, the center that you're opening in Brockton, that you feel like some sort of adaptation or of that would be helpful here in Scituate? Any sort of vision that you kind of come to the board with?
I think so. I think that dementia is a much bigger issue than most people realize, and it's a much broader disease. There are several different types, and some of them can strike really as early as people in their 40s. And I think that we're only going to see more and more of that happening. And so my hope would be that I can bring my expertise in that to at least the board for when they're thinking of programming and things like that, to be able to kind of offer and kind of be proactive in approaching those issues here in town.
Karen, any?
I think that everyone's so focused on the building right now that, and as rightfully they should be, but in terms of programming, if you look at what we offer right now, where would you say is a big opportunity for us?
I think that we're always going to have the standard here. There's going to be bingos, there's going to be trips, there's going to be those kinds of things. But I think that, technology is a huge thing that we can do more with always, because it's always changing. So there's classes around those kinds of issues. Partnering, I think, is going to be huge with other, like the library is new now. How do we work with them and make sure people understand they can download ebooks and listen to them on their phone or something, those kinds of things. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity. And then I think that to be, how do we anticipate needs? Dementia being one of them, and it's kind of my world at the moment, so it is what I think about a lot. Right. But how do we anticipate what's going to be coming down the road and offer classes and not just think about how do we actually offer services to seniors directly, but how do we also help their caregivers and their families to help take care of them? So not thinking of it just as a place where people go and play bingo.
Right.
Not that I think people do that, think that here, but like it needs to be a bigger kind of approach to this is a service we provide, not simply a building where people hang out.
Great, well, the only thing I know you haven't been to a meeting yet, regardless of whether you get put on the committee or not, you can participate from a meeting, that's what, meeting doesn't. But you certainly, I think some people, like Karen mentioned, were getting involved because of the aspect of the new building and how they can add to that aspect, where you're really more coming from the programming aspect as well.
People decide where the bathrooms goes. I don't really care. I've had enough of that in the building of the new center, it's all good.
I have one question, can I ask one question? Would you classify yourself as a doer or a delegator?
Ooh, wow.
It's a good HR.
I know, that's exactly what I went to. I
just work too darn hard.
I think I'm more of a doer than a delegator, which is,
Great, good answer.
I mean, you know, it's good and bad.
Well,
You
it's
need to be able to
challenging
know
because when you
yeah.
have these big committees, a lot of people come in with great ideas, but then actually executing them and implementing them becomes an issue.
Yeah.
You know, so
Fair
that's
enough.
why I was curious, you know.
Yeah, you gotta have some people that are willing to get their hands dirty.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Good luck with your
Oh.
healing.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm doing very well, thank you though.
Good.
Good, and I believe the last one of the evening is Mr. Kelly. All right. Mr. Kelly. And you're here for the Veteran Services Advisory Council.
Correct.
Tell us, you know, the answer for a bunch, tell us just a little bit about yourself and why you want to be involved in this.
Well, it's a known fact that veterans don't step forward and ask for help. And there's a need for an awful lot of help. We have probably 15 to 1,600 veterans in the town of Scituate. And best of my knowledge, I think we're helping about 10. I was on the advisory council. Matter of fact, I introduced the advisory council to the board years ago. And it went well. We accomplished quite a bit. We brought to the town the first Massachusetts Fallen Heroes Run. First in Massachusetts, we brought that. My wife and I brought Grease Across America to the town. And now that's handled every single year by American Legion. I certainly would like to get back in there because I believe now I can have the support that I needed from the town years ago to bring it to the next level. I'm a doer. And probably the biggest reason why I'd like to get re-involved is because of my son, Michael. My family's mission is to keep his memory alive, and I believe I can walk the walk and talk the talk to these veterans. I know what they've gone through. Based on what my son has gone through, these guys made it home. That's great. And I need to help them when they're here. The other thing which I think we kind of missed the boat on is, sure, we're aware of the veterans in town, but we're not aware of the widows of those veterans. And they also have ways of us helping them. Okay, there's benefits for them also. They're probably not as much aware of what's available than the veterans themselves. So that's where I'm at. I mean, I'll answer any questions that you have. Again, just to give you a little bit more of an example, I believe that our job as the council is to provide opportunities, outreach opportunities for the veteran servicemen here in town, for Don. Expose him more and more to the needs of veterans in town and to help him in that effort. But that can't be done without the support of his superiors. And I was told that that's installed right now, that is available. So if we're all working together, okay, we can really make a difference here in town. Again, it's to look at other towns, surrounding towns of Scituate, and see how those veterans are being helped. And look at Scituate, in a town that my son grew up in, and those veterans aren't being helped as much as other towns that are helping their veterans. Another example would be Rockland. Rockland has a similar population of Scituate, like Scituate, and there's pretty close to 50 veterans that are in their files being helped. So there is a need. I can help, bring that need forward, and support the veterans in town and the vets. Any other questions?
I'm sure there will be. Who'd like to start?
I think you're right, we've all, talking to other towns, for the veteran services, we all recognize that it is underserved and needs to be brought up. I was thinking for myself, I can't imagine someone more appropriate to help to do that outreach and to bring this council where it should be. So thank you very much for raising your hand. I have no other questions.
Sean, I'd just like to thank you as well. I don't think we have openings at this time. It's at renewals. And again, like tomorrow, maybe some of those folks that are up for renewal haven't reached out back to Lorraine and said they want to be put back on.
When was the last council meeting?
It's been phoned for a couple of years.
Right.
And we're working.
Okay. So how many people you have on the board now?
So right now, there's 4, I see. I think there's only 4, but there's 2 or 3 people that have applied that we haven't put on. I know Mr. Norton was one, and
A policeman.
young Wester, exactly.
Yep.
So there's definitely going to be enough interest for us to reenact the mission and get them up and running in our council. And I know Lorraine, maybe you can help me. Is there only so many civilians?
Yes,
So how
there's 2 civilian spots. I highlighted it in the next page.
Okay.
Which have the
I got it right there. So it's composed of 5 voting members not to exceed 7.
A supermajority of the council will be veterans, as defined by the Mass General Law, Chapter 4. So we have, it's 5 to 7 members. We currently have 1, 2, 3. I'm waiting to hear from Ron Wheatley. I hear he's there, I'm not really sure. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 applicants for
If we want to fill all 7
2 or 3
slots,
positions.
so there would have to be, for a supermajority, you can only have 2 civilians.
Which we currently have.
Mr. Keller, you with that as well?
Have we heard,
So
so
we could probably do, if we had 7 members, we could have 3 civilians, right?
Well, supermajority is, yeah,
Jen, what's a supermajority?
it's 1 more
As
than
opposed to simple?
Instead of 5 people, we're gonna.
Supermajority, we 4 out of 5 in the supermajority. Majority's 3 out of 5. Depends on the
So
number.
5 out of 7.
Right, so if there's 7, it needs to be 4.
Yeah.
So,
That means it would
we'll
be an
figure out the dynamics of it. We
Okay.
can also have associate members, And you can also be involved heavily without being on the board. I mean, I think, obviously with your background and your son's involvement, there's clearly a role for you on this commission when it gets reinstated, regardless of what it's called. So we can,
I mean, the other thing too, just to throw this out there, is I have all kinds of connections through the military, all the way to the Adjutant General of the state, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Massachusetts Veterans Affairs, a couple of generals. So I don't know what the outcome will be, but clearly there's a role for you in this. And I think we all have to, I think it's easy to look at other towns and say they're doing it better than us or they're doing more than us. And I think the job of this commission or this council is going to be, what are they doing that we're not doing? Because clearly what we want to do is service all the veterans. So we've got to figure out how we can improve our system and move forward proactively to make ours just as strong as everybody else's. I know I didn't, did either of you have any questions?
No, I mean, you said it. It's, how do we reach these people? If we know there are 1,500, then how do we find them? How do we connect with them? And it seems to me as though this council could be very active in terms of identifying, finding, going to visit people.
It's really not that difficult if you set up outreach programs. And there's information from the state that will provide us with the materials we need for an outreach, multiple outreach programs.
So there is an actual list of people that we can reach out to?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
First step.
But you got to do it.
Well, that's, yeah, what I'm saying, first step. Thank you.
And clearly the goal is to get every veteran that deserves a service what they're entitled to.
Right.
So that's the goal.
Or at least to discover veterans that need the help.
Right.
They're not going to come and ask for it.
Right.
Not that, you just want to give help to everybody that doesn't need it. I mean, the veterans that need help, I mean, we should be availing ourselves to that. Simple. But they need to be aware of it, and they're not going to come and ask. They're a proud group of people.
Any other questions, Mr. Bell?
No?
Okay, so let us figure out the dynamic. I would like, Lorraine, I don't know if anybody else is interviewing for that, but maybe by the next meeting, we can vote that one and figure out.
Yeah, we've finished all the interviews for that.
Oh, yeah, so why don't we figure out how we can actually vote that? And yeah, I know Kim Stewart is anxious to actually get a meeting started. I'm the liaison to that as well, so we'll vote next week, or next meeting, who we're going to put on this committee, and then we can have a meeting in this week coming up with that. Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Thank you.
All right, well, that wraps up the interviews, I believe, right, for tonight?
Yes.
You know what I would like to do is, at least in the case of Betty, and if there's any other easy ones, just appoint them where there's 22 spots available.
Yeah, we could do that at the next meeting. I mean, not in prepared.
Okay. So,
We're going to do a lot of appointments, hopefully, at the next 2 meetings in September.
good. Great, so we can at least put the veterans on the next one. Okay, so Sean has done such a good job keeping this meeting on track. The next two items are actually, have been canceled. We have the DPW contract, so why don't we go over those, Sean? Oh, yeah. This is the top. Mr. Chairman, that's your board. Okay.
The first one, the fuel contract, are state contracts that the state prepares annually. This is a renewal for Dennis K. Burr, who won the bid once again for Region 3, which is Situate's location for gasoline and diesel fuel, for a contract limit up to $400,000 till next July. This is a contract that's set to expire coming up, so we're getting this in place before that happens. There was a 3% or a 3-cent increase in the diesel price and a 2-cent increase in the gasoline price from last year.
How long is the contract?
For the year, yes.
And what are the prices that we're getting?
For the upcoming year, they advertise prices based on how much you can take in a delivery. If you can take a full load, which we now can, with the new tankers over 8,000 gallons, it's almost half the price per gallon in savings from what they will deliver.
I'm going to abstain, but you don't want to mislead them with that comment. It's maybe half the delivered, it's not,
correct.
the price is not cut in half. The delivery fee or the differential, the margin on the rack might be cut in half, but not
By
the price per kilo.
Right, by taking the full load of the delivery, they reduce. Thanks for the clarification, John. I don't want to mislead.
So
That is correct.
is it kind of like is there like a LIBOR rate and we pay 1 point above it? How do they get the?
Yeah, and there are fluctuations throughout the year that they, like Sean said, have built in for adjustments throughout the year. 4 different federal rates, excise taxes. They had,
Sean, how does this work?
It's based on the Boston and Providence Commerce Journal. It's the margin over rack, and they take the average, that daily posting, and it's pennies over that. But again, I'm abstaining.
Thank you for clarification.
Thanks for your objectivity.
Right, so a 1 or 2 cent increase is not it's a nominal increase over the prior year?
yeah, and the pricing actually goes out to the thousand in the dollars, in the cents rather. That's how far out they do the math. Believe it or not. This was the same vendor that won last year as well, and probably previous years that I can remember. Dennis Taylor making these deliveries.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, is this part of a group negotiation?
Yeah, the state solicits the bids, goes through them after all the bids are received, and then awards a contract that allows municipalities to be able to sign on, exactly, take advantage
So
of,
they
correct.
negotiate the rates.
Correct, ahead,
Right, and it's advantageous for us to be in a bigger group,
absolutely.
which I don't think a lot of people realize that we do a lot of that in town. We're part of larger groups depending on
Yeah,
who's doing
next contract
MAPC
as well.
and that sort of thing.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
More?
No, I'm good.
I've never seen this term in a contract, and I was just curious. Under Article 5, contract termination, number 4 says the contract may be terminated for convenience by the town. Nancy's nodding, and I would
We've
really
used
like to
that one
understand,
before.
what does that mean?
That's to our
Like, you
advantage.
just feel
Oh,
like,
If it's,
hours.
yeah. If it's convenient for us or to our advantage, we can terminate the contract.
and get less expensive gas if we still, whatever. So there's no, okay, that is a great term, I like that term.
Great. I don't have any questions. Just want to move to it.
Move toward a contract to Dennis K. Burke for the purchase of gasoline and ultra-low sulfur diesel. Oh, wait, here's the motion. Move toward a contract, for the purchase of gasoline pursuant to the state contract ENE 48 with ultra-low sulfur diesel pursuant to state contract ENE 47 to Dennis K. Burke of 284 Eastern Avenue, Chelsea, Mass. For the period of August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2020 for a total sum not to exceed $400,000.
Second?
Second.
Second one is Conley. Further discussion? How much did we spend last year?
Just over $300,000 on diesel and on gas. So we do get a prompt pay discount of 0.25% if we pay within 10 days.
Seeing no other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And one opposed, so 4-0 with, not opposed, abstaining, sorry, thank you. Okay, the next contract is for MAPC Costco Construction.
Correct. Situate, we belong to a part of a regional metro area planning council group, which is a group of the South Shore towns that provide estimates of what we're expected to use, and because those numbers are so large, when the MAPC puts out a bid, the contractors provide a reduced rate because they know how much work they're expected to see the following year or upcoming year. We give them estimated numbers, all the towns that are part of that. There is a contract that is out for sidewalk repair, new curb. All of those are put out as a bid item in the MAPC bid proposal. Last year, Casco Construction was awarded the contract. We were already under a contract with Capone to finish Hadley, so this wasn't necessary to be in place last year. However, we have a project coming up on Beaver Dam Road that they milled from Branch Street, Boston Road down into the tracks. We're going to replace the sidewalk from Lawson to the new entrance to the Roach Ball Field, the rear entrance to the park. So we're going to extend it about 200 feet and replace about 2,200 feet uphill of that exists now with new curb and new sidewalk. So we'll get this contract in place, and he's expected to start within the next couple of weeks. He's ready to go. We can move forward with this, using Chapter 90 funds for this project.
And how much is the project?
I did a quick estimate. I only have a sidewalk estimate of about 150, which is what this will come out. This will be opened and allow us to secure their services throughout the year.
So what are we paying per foot of sidewalk through this company?
Well, it'll be done through bid items that Casco provided, as well as the contract that TL Edwards provided through MAPC to do milling and grinding and casting adjustments and things like that. And those have different bid quantity items under a different contract that we are already awarded a couple of months ago to TL Edwards. MAPC went through the same process for road repairs, if it was called. This happens to be sidewalk construction.
So I'm told that TL Edwards did this.
They typically stay and do the roadway, and Capone Brothers previously continued to win sidewalk contracts. This is a new contractor, Casco, who became the low bidder this year for sidewalk construction.
Do they leave much on the table showing?
It's tough to break apart because there are over 30 bid items that they bid on.
And these are the rates through MAPC that we want to take advantage of.
Correct, rather than.
It's not just an individual bid that we have in front of us for an individual project, right?
Right, and we can use his different items. He has a lot of other items, concrete handicap ramps or concrete sidewalks if we wanted to repair a section down on Front Street. We could shop it, or we could call them up and use their.
Is there a sheet though that says what they charge?
Yes.
Where's, I'm looking at
It's on
Page
page
37.
Yeah.
Oh, 37.
The bid price forms, yeah, section 2. And there it is by unit, by foot of curb or square yard of sidewalk.
So, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If awarding this contract then, is it project specific, or if something else comes up, you can say, here's the price, and that circumvents the requirement of doing the whole bid process for everything?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, preparing another bid
Right.
or specification and shopping it or advertising it.
And
Correct.
And you're comfortable that we get a good value?
Yeah, there's a lot of input
Yep.
by our DPW as well as other surrounding towns. And when contractors don't perform we don't renew, or MAPC doesn't renew them, and they will prepare a new bid package, and try to get somebody else, and say that they were unresponsive, or, that's happened in the past with a couple of the smaller line striping contractor, I know they had problems with. They got rid of them.
And you don't have to bother terminating them because you're only going to give them my job.
Correct, when we need them to provide a specific service, yeah. We did this with the guardrail, so now we can take advantage of their cost saving and use their unit prices for the guardrail company.
You don't have to go out and bid and everything.
So we do have a job, so, just say Cape Road.
Yeah.
Granite or Cape Cod Road?
No, I think it's granite. Going back in, so it'll be new, because I think that's concrete, if there's any left.
We have a bylaw that says it should be granite.
Beaver Dam, Sean?
Yeah.
Granite.
Granite,
It's granite now, it's being replaced with granite.
I know it's Kevin's preferred curb type, that's for sure. The ice cream safe.
So what we're bidding tonight is to accept the contract of this company, Tasco, for all their prices for all those things on that list. We're not bidding that specific sidewalk that you mentioned.
Correct. Yeah, we can take advantage of any of the work that they provide in their bid.
Any other questions?
Yeah, curious minds want to know. So Tilden Road, Beaver Dam, the sidewalk ends at that light, right? The new sidewalk that went in?
Yeah.
There's no sidewalk that goes up Beaver Dam to the train
I
tracks?
think it's the
is there?
train crossing that this happened on Holland Street as well.
So,
In order to make a connection, they
right,
end up needing to change the gates in order to provide a crossing, from my understanding.
so are we building a sidewalk from Roachfield down to the,
No.
No, it's gonna go from the first parking lot, as you look at it,
yeah,
parking lot on the left, past the ball field, and the parking lot on the right.
I
That's
see,
the new
That's the-
sidewalk, and then the sidewalk going up Beaver Dam towards the old gates is being replaced.
okay.
The existing
So we
sidewalk.
can't make that connection
We're not
because
gonna go
of
down
the
there.
train
Right.
tracks, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Move that the Board of Selectmen award the contracts to provide supplies and services to the Department of Public Works to Tasco Construction for sidewalk construction.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Paul.
Any questions for DPW project for Sean? So,
Now that you're here.
yeah,
I have a question. The dog park, drain,
Yep,
Repair.
I'm waiting for it to rain because I want to be sure what they did as an improvement. We discussed, Scituate dog pond, is what I heard for a brief time there. And the contractor offered a solution, we ran it through our design engineer, and he was happy with the solution. So we're hoping that that is not going to happen again.
so it's done, but we're just waiting
There
to
was some
test
punch
it?
list items.
Okay, 'cause it's not open yet, right?
Correct, yeah, they did some fence tops and odds and ends, they needed to stripe the crosswalk, that didn't get done when they striped the handicap parking. Just some odds and ends like that, as well as, and I just got, the benches will be installed tomorrow.
Okay.
And last week I took delivery of the dog wash station, the week prior I got the dog wash fountain. So we're just waiting for that stuff to come in, get it installed, and then we'll, try to set a grand opening date. I know the Friends of Scituate Dog Park too have been working on a lot of donations. Gonna have some fundraisers. We could purchase some amenities, I think, that'll go in the park and have a tag put on them, or trying to decide how to do it, whether we do it a donation wall, like over the basketball courts by the high school, or whether you get a plaque on what you purchased. Coming along.
so what did they do? Because I saw your guys out there digging. Did they actually put piping in that's gonna move, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure why, they have a drain installed in the middle of that, and they're assuring me that it was installed to grade. However, the low spot was not where the drain was. So what they needed to do is, they were getting surface water, the pond next to it. So what we ended up doing is installing a stone fabric lined trench to run out into the low spot, because we weren't just finding water in the low spot, but it was sitting just under the wood chips throughout that area. So we thought this was the best way to collect it over a long stretch of stone and put a point, like a catch basin, for everything to try to get to it. Let's put in a long stone trench that we can pick up water over a longer distance, and it's going to end up in the same drainage system, covering more area than just a low spot. Yeah, the engineers assured me the grades were correct. It was an obvious visual error. Yeah, but now there's a, yeah, exactly. So I want it to rain.
Did we design that, or did?
No, Forsley Whitten. That was an RFP process. Because of the funding, or the majority of the funding from the Stanton Foundation, this is what they do. They had certain requirements as to who could design it. So when we wrote our RFP, they needed a landscape architect on board. They needed a civil engineer on board. There were certain requirements so that those things would show up in the plan. They didn't want to just say, put a fence up and here you go.
So you had a pretty good idea of what was, how they were designing and stuff like that?
Along the way, yeah, I mean, they had a concept when they first came in, and then realized that it had to be really designed.
Can I ask a stupid question? I mentioned it to Jim. Why didn't you just dome it?
And go the opposite direction.
Why you drain it? It's gotta run
But the site lent itself nicely to do what they did in terms of changing existing grades. There was some high spots. Because it was so wooded, it was tough. If you walked out through the brush, you would feel yourself ending up over a hump or down in a hole. And when you start to look at, when you grade the site, you take the top off this hill and you put it in this hole, all of a sudden the site balances and there isn't a lot moving or a lot being trucked in.
This is a good reason why they did it. You happy with what you see there, or, you know, if it works,
Yep.
you are.
Right?
I mean, it looked like they were doing a great job when they were stripping it and everything.
They were, first time I worked with that company out of Lakeville.
Right.
They had done other dog parks prior to this, that both Forsley Whitten had designed. When we sat down and reviewed the bids with Friends of Scituate Dog Park, they loved them. And then they said, why can't we give it to him? And I said, well, he's not the low bidder. Unless you can donate me the water surface, because that's an alternate. We didn't have to do it, but we could deduct it. They became the low bidder, and Teddy Ringler donated the installation of the water surfaces for the fountains. So then we could have awarded to Green Acres Landscaping, and they've done a few of them. Yeah, I thought they were very organized, other than that puddle that showed up.
Any other DPW questions?
I have a question. Do we, maybe this is Nancy or Jim question, do we have any sort of an agreement, signed agreement with the Friends of Scituate Dog Park as to what their responsibility is?
Yes.
All right, because oftentimes with these projects, people give them to us and then no one's maintaining it. And they promised us that they would. So I just
We
wanted
had
to
some long conversations with them, conversations about where to put the barrels. We actually had to take the barrels out of the dog park and put them up against the fence we made out of, how to connect them. So, yeah, we have a signed agreement with them, what they're responsible for.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm kind of delaying it, because we're not going to start the meeting on Cedar Point until 9 o'clock. So, if you don't get a chance to get here, so, Sean, sit back and relax. Just another quick question. What is the status of the field? The field project at the high school?
We covered that.
We're on schedule right now.
If you have just general questions, who's the point person on the cement at the middle school? I don't know. The sidewalks.
I mean, that'd be for the school building committee, probably Ron. We reached out to the, I reached out to the attorney today to get an update and have that back.
And I just have one more question, and maybe you talked about this before I got here. The water department, we asked them to look into the filtration system that we want to give chronic. We talk about that?
Just watch the tape if you want.
For those of you that are, I got here a little bit late tonight, so I missed so that's
Yeah, I mean,
discussed.
the part we're struggling with, Tony, is how do we define chronic? Who's gonna define it? And then if they don't like that answer, who are they gonna appeal to?
That's why we gave it to them, and we didn't try and do that. And so if you can get some ideas back to us, then we can.
Yeah, Kevin's on vacation this week, and once he comes back, we'll finish that up.
Good, so just to repeat to everybody, we're trying to get a program together so that those people that get chronic groundwater will be able to get a filtration system from the town and filters until we get this problem solved, which is going to be a longer term instead of a shorter term project. So we just have to identify who those people that get groundwater all the time is, and it's not from a event. You know, it's not because we had a fire in that neighborhood, it's not because we just flushed something, it's not because we did something there, but they're just in a bad section of town that gets chronic groundwater. So their town administrator's working on that. Great, so at this point, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll get back and give everyone a chance to get who was here for the 9 o'clock meeting once here.
Thanks, Sean. Wait, did we both have NTC?
Can't jump in.
Just want to make sure we do it.
It's 3 minutes of 9, we'll wait a couple of minutes and start. You guys all set?
Sure.
Good evening, thanks for coming in. So our next business, old business for this evening, discussion vote for the Cedar Point sewer project. We've got Sean from DPW, Will, Rosemary, and I think that's it. And then, of course, Jim and all the residents here. I'll start off by giving you my 2 cents, and then we'll open up. So this is our third meeting, at least our third meeting. We've discussed a lot about it. We've got a lot of information. I hope we can make a decision tonight. I think we should be able to. It's a very tough decision from my perspective. We've got all of the consultants in the town that are leaning towards one type of a system. We've got a good portion of the residents that are leaning towards another type of system. And I think from just discussions individually with board members that there's a lot of, back and forth in terms of how we should move with this project. There's probably, 2, 3, 4 main factors that we're considering when we're looking at this. And we've really tried to take cost out of the equation, right? Which is something I want to discuss in a second, because we're just trying to look at the systems and try and say, okay, what are these variables that are going to make or break? What is the right decision? Unfortunately, I don't think there is a right decision. I think both systems will work. There's just complexities of it. The electricity component seems to be the big issue with the low pressure system, right? You're in a tough part of town, you lose power, you get hit with storms. You don't want to be dependent on this grinding pump to whether your bathroom or your sewage system is going to function or not. There's counter arguments to that in terms of if the storm's that bad, you probably shouldn't be in the house anyways. There's generators that could be made available to do this sort of stuff to keep that pump going. But I understand your point. I think we all understand both sides of the issue. This isn't very clear cut one or the other. We also know that the low-pressure system is more reliable in terms of I&I, and that's what we're trying to resolve here, is an I&I problem in your part of town, and that system is not going to leak. We know the other system will leak at some point in time, like this one did. There's caskets, rubber caskets that are keeping these sections together, and this one has probably leaked as long as I've been doing this, 20 years. We've been talking about the I&I coming in from that part of town. So this system won't leak after 5 years, but some selectmen in 30 years will be sitting back here again saying, how come we have this I&I coming in this part of town? So that's kind of where I'm sitting looking at it. What I'd like to do tonight is, we'll have a discussion amongst the board. I'd like to hear from our town officials in terms of what you guys are thinking. I think we know we've read memos and talked to you before, but get that in. And then I'm not going to rehash the conversations we've had with the residents. I will give a couple of you an opportunity to speak if there's something new that you want to bring to it. I think we understand what's going on. I don't want to rehash the numbers. They're both expensive. I personally think that if we go with the gravity system, it's going to be a lot more expensive than what we think it's going to be, because just the construction project, to me, if we got to go down 20 feet, dealing with the tides and dealing with all that stuff that they got to put in the roads, it's going to be a mess, and it's going to be expensive. But the numbers that we have are the numbers we have, and we're not going to do math. From my perspective, it's going to be a betterment anyways. So you guys, and I want to make sure we're all clear on that. If anybody has any discussion against that, I'd like to talk about it now, because I know that some people in your group have thought that there isn't going to be a betterment for this. And if you think that it is, I think we should hash that out. I think you will get the benefit of a $2.2 million grant, which we've gotten from the Drew Company, and I know Representative Kearney's helped get that, the constraints of that kind of lenient so that we'll be able to use that. So you guys will be getting a $2.2 million benefit towards this. But whatever it is above and beyond that is going to be a betterment, and it's going to be expensive, because there's only 129 or 127 houses that are going to be impacted by this. And if you take, Nancy, you can help me with the math, but if it's a $5 million project, and it's a betterment, I'll look at, so we have one project that's like $6 million, that's $70,000 per household. And if it's $3.6 million, that's $42,000 per household. So that's a lot of money. And I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. And if you have any concerns about that, to speak now before we get into any discussion, because that may sway people's decisions in terms of where we go with the project.
But we should clarify the numbers. I think
Yeah.
3.6 is less the grant.
Right, so the 3.6, yeah, I don't even have complete confidence in the base number that we're starting with.
Totally.
But the base number for the gravity system is about $6 million is what we're estimating. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy. That will be a $70,000 betterment to every household. And if you take off that $2.2 million grant, that will bring it down to about 3.7 million, and that would be a $42,000 betterment for every house, which would then be amortized over 20 years, and it would cost somewhere between $2,000 and $3,500 a year extra on your tax bill for 20 years. Correct?
Estimated. Yep.
It's all estimated.
So that's based on the Woodward and current construction number, plus a design number, plus a contingency, plus some of the other construction.
If it comes in less, it'll be less. If it comes in more, it'll be more. So why don't we get that cleared up right off? I saw two people's hands go up, and there was someone that spoke to somebody on board that thought that was wrong. If we could discuss that now, I'd appreciate it. So I'll start with you, sir.
Yep, Dan Rosal, Jackson Road. I have a question on the betterment for the sewer. It sounds like you're replacing the old worn-out sewer pipe and charging the residents a betterment. What's the difference between this project and not charging people that we're replacing the water mains? Why they're not getting a betterment?
A water main?
Yes, we're replacing water mains in town, but the residents are not getting a betterment fee, charged because of that.
Yeah, we don't do betterments for water. but we do betterments for sewer. And this is it's a completely new system that's going in. The other system's been in there, it's been in there for 50-something years, we all decided, it's failed. It's like the roof has holes in it, it's time to get a new roof. And that's what we're trying to figure out, which one of the two.
But the folks have been paying water and sewer fees for 50 years. I just don't see much of a difference between why you're charging a betterment fee for replacing a worn-out sewer system that they've been paying sewer fees for, just the same as we've been paying water fees to replace it.
Yeah, water and sewer are different.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a good question, because everyone in town benefits from clean water. That's really, because we asked that question years and years ago. Everyone benefits from clean water.
Okay.
I think, sir, did you have a question?
You answered my question.
So, is there anyone else in here that has any questions in terms of how this will be financed? Yes,
You know, it's my understanding from conversations I've had with other people and state representatives that the state is willing to grant the $2.2 million for either system.
Yes.
Just on application of town, I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, so those were the two numbers, assuming that we get the grant for the second application, which we're pretty confident we can.
Okay.
That would be the lower of the two numbers, the 42 instead of the 69.
So that applies to
Yeah.
both
So you
systems.
guys, you know, not everybody else gets that.
Yeah.
That's a good benefit for you. Yes, ma'am?
Is there a betterment on the low pressure system also?
Yes.
And what will that be?
Well, the quote for
The way the low pressure system has been designed and quoted, there is no betterment at this point unless the board decides to put it on. Right now, the low pressure system would be installed at no cost to the homeowners.
It could potentially be no cost. We haven't decided how to do that. So the board would have to figure out how they want to do that. But the quote is at 3.3. 3.3, and you have a $2.2 million grant. So the board would either decide to charge you $1 million benefit over the 129 houses, which is simple math, you know, $8,000 or something. Or it would decide to put it into a capital plan and have the sewage pay for it. I would vote for the first, but I don't know what the board would say.
Point of information, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair. So in 2017, 2.5 million was approved in the capital plan to reduce I&I.
Right.
And so if you add that to the grant, that covers the bid that has been received for the pressure system, which is why there's no overage that would need to be better. If we didn't have enough, then the delta would be that betterment fee.
But
that's what
we
that's
as a
paid.
board never voted to use that as a capital project to replace the sewer system. So we would have to decide, do we want that $2.5 million to give a new sewer system to a part of town, or will we charge it better?
But that was approved at town meeting.
For
that
I&I
purpose.
work.
At Cedar Point.
That's Cedar Point.
Yeah.
At Cedar Point, but not to replace a new system. If it's replacing a new system, then there's a betterment can be assessed.
At Cedar Point.
But we have to vote. I don't know how it will turn out. But it would be one of those two.
The discussion has been that there would not be a betterment for the pressure system, but that again is up to the board.
Right. So it would be one of the two, $1 million betterment or nothing. Yes, sir.
Well, let's decide if there's going to be a betterment for that or not. I mean, for the pressure system. I mean, that's kind of leaving it out in the...
Well, we'll decide, we'll vote when we want to vote, but
You have to go back to town meeting.
we'll discuss that. Yeah, we'll discuss that when we get to that point.
I got a question for you. My understanding is once we paid a betterment, we would never have to pay another one.
That is correct. You do not have to pay another betterment for the system that you currently have. But this is not the system that you currently have. This would be a new system or a significant upgrade to the existing system. Therefore, you can be assessed a betterment.
On that note, even if what Jim's saying is not true, and I think most everyone in this room feels where I stand on this issue, okay? Do you think that would be, all right, so you got a betterment back in the early 70s of $600, $1,000, whatever it was. Do you think if you were in the West End do you think you should be responsible for paying for a Cadillac system or a system that's not recommended by the engineers? And that's when I told somebody, I said, I don't know if I could back your cause if that was the case. Again, if I'm in the West End and the engineers are saying that a pressurized system will work great, but everyone on the point doesn't want the pressurized system, they want the gravity system, why should the people in the West End have to pay for any of that?
We paid for you to put it into town buildings when we first got it back in the early stages. We were the first area to get sewage. And we paid a betterment, plus we paid for hooking up to some of the town buildings back then, because I remember that happening. And we paid more than enough to have you correct the system.
I don't know what you're...
Well, I just want to raise that point, and I think I told this person that, gee, if that's the case, I don't know, and I think probably your strongest supporter, I don't know if I could support that if everyone on the point said, well, gee, we don't think it should be a betterment, it should be a cost over the whole town. And then we'd have people coming to us and saying, well, gee, they could have had a system that would have worked at no cost to me, but they chose a Cadillac, I'm just going to say, a Cadillac system, and now it's costing me money. So I'm all for a gravity system, and I have been since the day one, but if that is, like to Tony's point where he opened it up, if everyone said they didn't want, or didn't feel they should pay the betterment, I don't know if I could stay in that same position.
I'm just, one second.
It's so funny because we've all been thinking about this for a long time, and I had sort of the same initial reaction to, well, we're putting a new system and I don't understand the whole betterment thing. So thanks to the very talented staff at our sewer department, walking you through and looking at it, the way I wrap my head around it is if you bought a car 20 years ago and you paid it off and it ran great and it serviced you, and the car was junk and you had to get rid of it, you have to go buy a new car. And that is sort of where I came out on understanding why it's appropriate. The whole system has to be replaced. The town, to your point, the town spent money town-wide. It wasn't a betterment when they, I believe, when they lined the pipes, when they tried to keep everything going for the time that they had. Correct me if I'm wrong, that was part of the system and no one was charged that because that was our responsibility. But there's no Band-Aid that's going to work with this, and it's going to have to be a new system, just as if we were extending it to a new community. So that's just sort of how I kind of wrap my head around why that's appropriate. And then I spent a great deal of time, I'm not a lawyer, but I tried to go through all the Mass General laws to try to understand it as well too. I hope that helps to sort of wrap your heads around, because it's how I kind of think to that place.
Do you want me to go to this one before?
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Michelle Loring, 67 Rebecca Road, just a general statement about Sean's question. The way I've always viewed government, and I was in government for 35, 40 years, that's what I did. Government is supposed to be for the people. Now, I pay taxes for schools. I never had a child. There's public ways in town that I've never driven on in my life. There's bridges that I've never gone across that I've paid for. There's all kinds of activities and services that a town gives. I've never had an ambulance call. I've never had a fire. I've never had a police officer pass. But I've paid for all of these services because these are public good. It's public services. So I think we have to kind of keep that in mind as far as this whole broader picture.
But what is your point in regards to the betterment?
I'm not going to say anything one way or another on the betterment. I'm just saying that when Sean says, oh, people in the West End would complain because they're paying for my sewer system, I paid for their road. I paid for God knows what else up there, or their school, or whatever it is. It's a public good. It's a public benefit.
Well, this is an enterprise fund, and it's specific to the users. And you are the user, and you reap benefit that people on the West End don't reap. which is why it's different than a firefighter that covers the whole town.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Something, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'd also just comment, I do feel the same way as Sean, that, the initial proposal did include, the capital funds and the grant, and a very sufficient solution, that I do understand everyone's concerns with power. I think that's really everybody's main concern, is power with the pressure system, in my opinion, and I'm sure many of you will tell me if that's not true. But when comparing to choose a system that is the Cadillac, as Sean says, and assessing that betterment, I fully support that, because there are many, many, many people in this town that aren't on sewer, that are on septics. And when their septics fail, they take on that cost themselves. So that's where that helps me reconcile the betterment issue, because it isn't a town-wide benefit by any stretch of the imagination, because there are thousands of homes out there that are on septic, and when my septic fails, the town doesn't help me. I have a $20,000 to $30,000 problem that goes on my own mortgage. So I just, for equity, that's, how I can support applying a betterment for the residential preferred solution. That
I just want to go back to this one second. So, I don't know if you were the one that thought that a betterment should not be assessed.
I didn't say that.
Okay,
In fact, I specifically said, I'm not saying anything about betterment, one word or another.
Okay. Sir?
Yeah, Dan Hannigan, 6 White House Road. I don't want to speak for the other neighbors, but for me, it's the devil's in the detail. And I know we're referring to this as a Cadillac system.
Yeah,
it's kind of just a phrase. For me, it's the maintenance. For me, it's backing up into the house, and it's a $5,000 bill to clean all the rugs. For me, it's people running water, dripping because they let it run through the lines so the pipes don't freeze during the winter. That water dripping through the line fills up the tank, it has no power, backs up on the house. I think that's the problem for most of us, is the fact that we now have something we also have to maintain and possibly replace after a friend or a neighbor or somebody visiting dropped in with disposable white. That's kind of deceiving there as well. So I think that's the issue for us.
Yeah. And frankly, that's the only reason why we haven't made a decision so far tonight. So if it wasn't for those two things, they'd probably be putting a low-pressure system on your street right now. Yes, sir.
Chief Brown, 51 Rebecca Road. I had a question. Earlier it was mentioned the town had set aside money for the I&I and got a grant, so those are two different stacks of money that could pay for either system, I'm assuming. And we're doing this system because of high I&I. And so I'm assuming the town money set aside for reducing I&I will also go for the gravity feed system. Is that true?
No, that money won't go. The $2.5 million, if we're going to replace the system in totality, well, we're going to vote on it. I don't know how everybody else feels. But if we're going to put a new system in there, that $2.5 million to solve I&I probably will not be used, and we'll have to go vote before, because we're...
Are we replacing the system because of I&I? So we've got money set aside for I&I.
So the town voted $2.5 million for an I&I project at Cedar Point. I'm trying to answer. The town voted $2.5 million for the system at Cedar Point. The project that we have bid in, contract ready to be signed, is 3.3. We have a $2.2 million grant. So the delta is coming out of that $2.5 million that we've already authorized. If you went to a gravity system, I don't have the town meeting vote in front of me. I don't believe the town meeting vote specified a pressure system. So it could still be used, but it would be insufficient when added to the $2.2 million to do a gravity system. We would not have enough money.
Right. The intention... The intention of the board, or at least this board member, when we voted that $2.5 million, was not to put a new system in for Cedar Point. It was to have funds accessible to fight I&I. This system has failed. It's past its useful life, and I don't think it's fair to tax the town $2.5 million of a capital project so that a new sewer system can go into this part of town, is my thought.
Mr. James? May I respectfully disagree with you on this?
Of course you can.
I went back, because I wasn't on the board at the time, and I wanted to see exactly what was voted and what was said. And it wasn't specified, but it was very clearly stated by the DPW chief at the time. The town was to spend $2.5 million to replace the system at the time, and it was for pressure, and then he talked about pressurized, but it wasn't the vote. It was to reduce I&I and to use the money for replacement is what
Well, you said a lot of things there. So
Yeah,
does it say replace I&I and, or does it say replace, and does it say?
It said, he explained, so the vote was to spend $2.5 million in capital money to reduce I&I at Cedar Point, correct. It was explained at town meeting that there was an urgency to do that and that they were recommending a pressurized system in which to remove that. So I wasn't there at the time, but when I listened to it, it said to me that that was the estimate at the time. This was 2 years ago, hadn't been bid. From that vote, DPW then earnestly worked to engineer and design a pressurized system as supported by the town meeting vote. So to your point, you could argue that it wasn't voted for a non-pressurized system. I would argue that those funds were to improve the I&I system and whatever we decided should be, and I would argue that the 2.5 should be applied to whatever system is selected.
I would agree with this.
So
It took me a lot of words to say that.
So you all agree that we should spend a $2.5 million capital project to get a new sewer system in Cedar Point?
Yes.
So when somebody else in another part of town wants a new sewer system, then we should get a capital plan and put an item on there for $2.5 million so the West End can get a sewer system in there instead of doing a betterment.
If it's like.
It's not relevant, it was already voted.
That was
We would have to revisit it at another town meeting. It's not a policy decision. It's not a policy
I'm
decision.
asking you guys conceptually.
Oh,
Well,
conceptually.
I would suggest that a brand new system is solving the I&I problem. Maybe not a gravity system for as long as we'd like it to solve it, but at least for the next probably 10 years or so. So it is solving the I&I problem just by having it be new. And I think that if town meeting voted to spend the money to reduce the I&I problem at Cedar Point, then that's what we're doing.
Can I make
And
2
I
points?
also,
Well, that's more.
I would also point out that I think a big reason why we got the Mass Works grant is because we had already allocated $2.5 million in reduction for I&I.
You had the money up front.
Right, so I think that was, a pretty big factor in us getting that additional support.
So this is Article FF at the annual town meeting of 2017. Vote to borrow the sum of $2.5 million for the purpose of I&I at Cedar Point and to further authorize the treasurer with the approval of the selectmen to borrow said sum. The vote was declared unanimous in favor.
So if I could just, to clarify, one, to just something that Karen said, the gravity system does not solve the I&I at Cedar Point. It postpones it. It doesn't solve it.
I did say
Okay.
not long-term,
But it doesn't,
but on an immediate basis.
it stops
It
the
does.
I&I for right now, but we end up back here. It doesn't fix the problem. The discussion on the betterment and the funding, it was always Kevin's intention. He apologizes. Kevin had a vacation, long scheduled vacation, Kevin Caffrey. Was that because this was a new, different type of system, that the town would pay to put this system in. Normally on a water and sewer project, when you put the new line in, the town puts the subs in, the residents are responsible for the laterals, for a water connection or a sewer connection. But Kevin felt because this was so new and so different, the town would take care of the whole thing, there would not be a betterment. As we had these conversations with the residents were preferring a system that, in my opinion, is substantially more expensive than the preferred solution. That's where the discussion of a betterment came up, that would the residents, might have even come from their suggestion that they would pay a betterment for the delta between this system and the gravity system. We estimate right now that's gonna be over $3 million, which is a $42,000 betterment for people. But the discussion on the system, the I&I system, there was never any discussion about, by this board, at least since I've been here, of this being a betterment for the I&I system. You would have to go back and re-vote at town meeting to impose that betterment, because the original vote does not speak to a betterment.
Right.
So the next time we're gonna improve I&I in, let's say this is the worst part of town, in the second to worst part of town, are we gonna put $2.5 million of capital into that project?
I don't know.
I don't understand how we vote. I don't.
Tony, are you?
Excuse me.
Okay.
I don't know why the town would pay to give a new sewer system to anybody in town. I don't know why they would do it. That's not the premise of an enterprise fund, and that's not, the users aren't the.
I think the issue is here is because it's a leak that, needs to be repaired. So
It's a failed system, it's past its life. It's over 50 years old, the thing's only supposed to last 50 years old. It's the roof on your house that now has holes in it. It's not a leaky system. We spent millions of dollars trying to fix the leaks for the last 10, 20 years.
Right, and it hasn't worked, so
Right.
now we have this new
Right.
pressure system as a proposal to do that.
So that's, again, this is my opinion. We've never discussed this as a board because it never got to this point where we were going to replace a system. We've put hundreds of thousands of dollars in I&I, millions of dollars in I&I in all parts of town. And that was my impression of what that vote was for. Yeah.
I think in this particular, I get the bigger philosophical question. You were on the board when it was put forth to do it as a capital, so I assume that, that was well vetted at the time. I don't think, for the purposes of this conversation, that it's relevant. I think the town has already voted capital monies towards this project. Whether we think today that that's appropriate or not, I think is immaterial to this discussion.
That's what you think.
Yeah, that is what I think.
Yeah. Follow up to this stuff, we're talking about I&I, trying to improve it, trying to get rid of it. And we're talking about a betterment for the people that are on Cedar Point. You mentioned 100 houses or so. It's my understanding that the reason we're trying to reduce the I&I is so that we're going to add more houses into the sewer system. So this is a betterment of theirs as well. So when you do your math and try to do the betterment for the 100 houses on the point, are you including the other houses that are going to be added in and get a betterment to help pay, the system so now that they can,
Well, their betterment is going to pay for the infrastructure that they need to be hooked up to the sewer. It is irrelevant to yours. They're going to say the pipes cost $5 million to hook up all these houses, $5 million divided by 500 houses is whatever it is. So it pays for that construction. That's the way it works. I mean, there's no, the town doesn't make anything on a betterment. You add up how much it costs to build it, you divide it by number of homeowners, and that's what you have to pay.
We, right now, the problem with the I&I is right now, we average about 400,000 gallons a day, Will?
Right now, our average is at the
No,
plants.
just in seawater.
In seawater, that or more.
Okay, we have a permit for about 1.6 million a day, average storage that we can run through our treatment plant. About 400,000 gallons of that is not storage that we're treating in our plant. We're paying to treat chemicals, all that stuff. We are right at that limit for what we can put through our plant. If we exceed that limit, the state will come down and say, here you go. You need to do all the I&I projects. Oh, and by the way, you need to fix your treatment plant, and you need to do this, and you need to do that, and that's got to be $50 million. Where's the money coming from? We don't care. You have 3 years. Have a nice day. So we have to do the I&I regardless of whether we're adding another house, another building, or another person to the storage system, or else the state's going to step in if we exceed that number. And what they're going to order, I have no idea. It can depend on what they have for breakfast that day. But they can come in, complete I&I, complete plant, do it all, here's the bill, enjoy it, we're gonna pay for it. So we need to do the I&I regardless of whether it's opening capacity further down the line, okay? The goal of this project is to remove I&I from Cedar Point. The way to remove I&I from Cedar Point is to do a pressure system. That removes the I&I. A gravity system will leak again, okay? I've been doing this for 20-something years. This is one of those rare instances where the right solution is also the less expensive solution. It doesn't happen very often, okay? The low-pressure system will eliminate the I&I. Will pointed out in a memo that he sent to people that DEP says gravity is the ideal solution. This is not an ideal case. He also points out that the industry says a gravity system, when you design it, I'm going to get the math wrong, sorry, Will, you should account for an additional 250 to 500 gallons per day of I&I per inch of diameter of pipe. Will can do that math, I can't do it. Gravity systems will leak. There seems to be this belief that gravity systems do not fail. We have two potential gravity systems that we could put in. A shallow gravity system, which would require a pump station somewhere on Cedar Point. So all the arguments we've had about the individual pumps at people's homes would now pertain to that pump station out at Cedar Point. What happens if the power fails? What happens if we can't get there? We did have a failure at the Sandhills pump station, if you recall, the poor picture of Will in a rowboat going out to a flooded Sandhill station because a pump had failed. That would have caused the loss of surge on Cedar Point, on Oceanside, on that entire area of town, with backups in people's homes, raw surge. So gravity systems also fail and have their problems. They do clog up. To replace the existing system at 17 feet, we believe will be substantially more expensive than what Woodward and Curran has in their estimate. Because Woodward and Curran's estimate is based upon doing a regular source system that far down, this many feet, does not take into account that Cedar Point is an isthmus surrounded by water, the dewatering, all those problems. We would now have to go back, completely redesign this project. We would then have to go to town meeting next year for additional funds to build the project. No one at Cedar Point is going to let me stop this type of project June, July, August, and September, because Cedar Point will in a sense be closed for the most part. So we're talking over a year before we start this I&I project. In the meantime, that gun that the state is holding to our head about our average daily discharge potentially is going to go off. This project is shovel-ready. It is the correct project to do out there. I understand the issues that some of the residents have. I think we have available funds that we can sit down with some of their representatives and come up with solutions to those problems. The power issue, the pumps, okay? Maybe we replace a pump per household. If the pump fails and it's not abuse, if it's not warranty, maybe the board says we'll replace a pump. We can buy generators to use out there. There are a whole host of things we can do because of the way this project came in and the $2.2 million grant to fund it. That we can come up, I think, with solutions that is going to help these people. That's not going to potentially cost the town significantly more for a system that will not work as well, and because of the delay, may trip us into that DEP consent order that could cost every single ratepayer in Scituate thousands and thousands of dollars on their rates when we have to do all those repairs within a very short time span that the DEP will order. Rosemary, consent decree, how many years is it, 2 or 3 usually?
They usually give you 2 or 3, and then you have to maintain it. They don't even give you an end date for maintaining it. They can still come in with additional items.
So we have the ability to give the residents of Cedar Point a brand new sewer system at no cost to them.
You keep saying that, and I want to get back.
Well, the board has not opposed a betterment. The town has not opposed a betterment at this point. You would have to now, as a board, vote to go back to town meeting to ask to impose a betterment on this project.
Right.
Just sitting here right now, I don't see the votes for that. But, you know, I'm not great at counting, but I can count to 3. I don't see the votes to go back to town meeting and oppose that betterment. So, I mean, I would ask the board to approve the pressure system. Let's get started. In the meantime, the residents can have a couple people come in, meet with us. This is what we really need, and the town can figure out a way to try to make sure that happens.
Okay. I want to get back to the betterment stuff, and then we can go there. So, we're talking about the $2.5 million, and then we're talking about whatever the excess is, even for this system itself, how that's going to be paid for, because that is going to have a huge impact on how I vote. I mean, my thought process is, if you guys want the expensive one, you can have it, but you're paying for it. And if you're not paying for it, then my mind changes completely the other way. If a new system is going out to this area, because what if we chose Oceanside instead of that? Would you guys want to pay $2.5 million to give Oceanside people a new sewer system? I don't, I mean, you're gonna say yes now because you want to get a view, but that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is if whoever the person is getting the new car should have to pay the fee for the new car, in my eyes.
Sounds like you already said you were gonna pay for the I&I. You voted on it.
No, town voted, you just read it, to do I&I projects on Cedar Point. Sean just read it.
So that's what?
You could, I mean, if that's the way you, right, just, you can put your hands down, because right now the board's just gonna talk about this, and then we'll open it up to you guys in a minute.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
May I?
Of course.
I would like to get a pulse, because my biggest stumbling block is power and maintenance, right? Because I understand it's a little bit of a different system. I think it's, the pressure is going to reduce our I&I the quickest and the best. And I think that's the consensus of our consultants and of all the research that Will and the staff and everyone has done. So in my mind, I even asked Mrs. Loring this question, if there was a way in which we could develop and sit down, there's homeowner responsibilities, there's proactive measures that we take when storms are impending, right? It's not, we know typically when a storm's coming, right? We know that a nor'easter is coming, we know when a hurricane's coming up the coast. We typically have adequate notice to prepare. So if we can talk about developing, better preparation tactics with the residents, and then some of the solutions that Jim and Kevin and Will have come up, and I think you yourself, with regards to generator funding and/or, just what happens when that power does go out. And I think people would like to hear a little bit better and deeper, and I know I would, from Will and Woodward and Curran with regards to the additional gates that are in this pump, in these individual pumps, because I think there's a misperception that the minute power is cut, that it's all going to back up into the house, right? And that is the thing that, in my mind, I want to make sure is avoided, right? Because I do not want any sewer going into these folks' homes, and that's something that I want to understand a little bit better.
I respect that. I want to get the betterment cleared up between the five of us, and then we can talk about all that other stuff.
Okay.
So, how is the board thinking about paying for either of these systems?
I don't have a problem with either one of the grant or the
$2.5 million going towards this system.
That's correct, because we chose this area because it is the worst.
Yeah. So we're going to amortize the cost of this to every sewer user, so this area of town gets a new sewer system. Because even though
the 2.5
is a capital expense for the entire town.
No,
It's just for the enterprise.
Sure,
fund.
enterprise
Okay,
fund,
my
right.
mistake.
So, because that's going to come up again, the next time you want to do it, replace a sewer system in every other place that has a sewer in town.
Find me a situation as bad as this.
Oceanside, because that's the next one.
Is it as bad? Kevin told us.
Supposedly this is one and that's two.
40,000, it was metered. It was bad.
Oh, this is bad, that's why we're talking about it.
Worse, probably worse than we originally thought. So that's why we're going.
How do you get, Karen, I assume you feel you'll spend?
I think that the question's been asked and answered by town meeting, and the 2.5 goes to whatever project we pick.
Okay, and how do you guys feel?
I agree.
Okay. And you as well?
I agree the 2.5 and then 2.3 go to either system, and above that, the
Okay.
residents are responsible.
So I will be quiet.
I see what you're saying, it's,
Yeah,
but
I think it's a
here it
different
is.
situation.
Ionize a waste of money, you know, trying to line it, what we've done for 20 years, it's
And
completely,
it's crippling
replace
us
the
with
plant.
doing anything.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the system choice. What did you want to have answered?
So I would love
Even though-
for either of you to explain a little bit better, in more detail, really how the pumps and the gates work to protect, like at a power loss situation, from it backing up into the homes, because
The
that,
check valves.
yeah.
Yep, there's a check valve and a redundant check valve on the discharge of the pump. Another thing to point out is that the line is going to be discharging into a gravity system downstream. So that line is not going to be under severe pressure, around the clock, just when pumps are active, and when the power is out, the pumps aren't active. But yes, there are 2 redundant check valves, and then the tank itself is a holding tank, which would prevent things from going in as well.
So the check valves are in the pump, and there's a holding tank at each resident plus the pump, so can you just?
There's a holding tank where the sewer comes into the holding tank via just a typical pipe. So it's kind of like an air gap almost, but not officially. And then from the discharge end of the pump, there is a check valve and then a redundant check valve. We require a redundant check valve for added safety for these reasons.
Pump chamber holds about 70 gallons, according to the manufacturer. So if there is a danger of a backup, the danger is what's in the pump chamber, not what's in the storage line. That will not come back to the 2 check valves.
Okay.
So that's where you get any type of.
And that's where I think
problem.
there could be some proactive preparation in anticipation for a major storm.
Yep, in the case of a known approaching storm, we recommend running, clean water into the pump. And the pump, every time it activates, it scours the tank. So if you were to run sufficient clean water into the pump, that would cause all the waste in it to exit and go into the system. And then if you have to leave that water running or leave the pump unattended, the only thing that would be going into it would be the faucet water that would be left running, and not the leftovers.
And is that a manual process, running that water into the pump, or, forgive me, this is just not my thing, so I'm trying to understand it in layman's terms, so everybody, because I'm sure it's not a lot of people's thing, so,
Yeah, this preventive measure would be one that had to be carried out by manually.
Okay.
Just, turn the faucet.
Got it. All right, thanks, Mel.
I have a silly question. If we can have a pipe that will not leak for the gravity of the pressure system, why can't we have that same pipe for a gravity system?
Want to defer to the engineer on this one? Would you like to?
The materials are completely different. In a low-pressure system, the pipe is molded single plastic. It's usually a small diameter pipe. The gravity pipes are larger and they don't make them seamless. They have seals, they just don't make the gravity pipes.
And is there a reason why? Is it because the grinder pump is grinding it so it goes through a smaller pipe?
Yes, yes. So they're small diameter pipes, the low pressure system pipes. The other thing is there's a misconception, I think, that a gravity sewer is never going to leak. And I know Jim touched on this. The standards in the industry, when you're designing a gravity sewer system, you have to design in from day one that you're going to have leakage. Those are the numbers that Jim quoted. And especially in this area, you're going to be, if you put a gravity system in, you're going to put it in the water. The pipes now are sitting in the water. They're below the low tide line. These pipes are always going to be in water. So the chances of it leaking day one on are much greater. It's replacing in kind a system that has failed, you've had problems with for years. It's replacing in kind, so you can expect the same problems. Neither EPA or DEP. EPA is the federal environmental protection agency. And they have jurisdiction over your discharge permit at your treatment facility because you discharge the surface water, as well as Mass DEP. Neither regulatory agency would prefer that a gravity system go in here, and I've spoken to both of them. In a very specific case, because of the low-lying area, the historic chronological II, and the environmental issues. And when you're permitting, they're going to want you to put a low-pressure system in.
John,
Well, that
why
changes.
then why would we still
Why are
use
we
the
here?
grant?
The grant is
I
a
don't
totally different
understand it.
agency, Sean. The grant is not DEP or EPA. The grant is Mass Works,
MassWorks.
which is economic development. So,
Okay, so there wouldn't be any input from DEP or EPA on this? There wouldn't be any set of eyes looking over this?
Mass Works grant?
Yes.
Not necessarily, no. One other answer one of the questions that come up is, if there's cobble in the road and the pump chambers are covered in cobble, how would you be able to pump out the tanks? I think the answer to that was, Will, that the box on the side of the house would actually have a plug in it, a receptacle in it, where you just plug a generator in without having to clean off the casements. So you can get to that just by getting out to the house. You can plug in a generator and pump that out.
But you have to get to the house. don't you?
Right, but Sean, we're talking right now a $3.3 million system. Soup to nuts to build. We're talking well over 5 for the gravity system. The delta is pretty big.
I realize.
So the town can make a decision to use some of that delta to address some of these issues. I mean, it would be cheaper for me to buy everybody on Cedar Point a generator. I don't want to sound like a Democratic candidate for president. You're not getting free college and anything like that. But it'd be cheaper to buy everybody a $600 generator that could pump out the chamber, and we'd still be $2.5 million ahead of putting in a gravity system. So I think if we go forward with the pressure system, we can sit down with some representatives from Cedar Point and come up with solutions that will work to make sure that they will be okay in the event of a storm event. It's just, the numbers for me on the gravity system just don't work. It is so much more expensive to put in a system that we sitting here today know a future board is going to have to come back and fix, because it's going to leak again.
Anyone else got any questions?
Yeah, I want to go back to this DEP, EPA. Do we have to apply for permits for all of this to be done?
Just as a side note, the permit for the wastewater treatment plant is currently up for renewal. It expired in 2017. We have filed all the appropriate paperwork to renew our permit, but we're currently awaiting a draft copy of the new permit from the EPA. So they're already reconsidering where our permit stands, and they're looking at us pretty closely.
But I'm specifically asking about this particular project. Does DEP and EPA have to sign off on these projects? And is it possible that they might not, do they need to permit this system? Could they come back and say there was no way, you're not doing gravity system? That's what I just heard.
I think as a matter of, it's not an official permit, but do they have a say? Yes, they have a say.
What kind of a say?
They have a say because.
No, what kind of a say? An official say?
Yes.
A legal say?
Yes,
Can they
because.
stop us?
Yes, because they're under the, I think it's 314 CMR 1204, which is the Code of Massachusetts regulations. Mass DEP, in coordination with EPA, put the regulation in that by December 2017, every town that has a sewer system has to have a plan for addressing II. Situate complied with that. You have the 2016-2017 report that was done by CDM Smith, the report that we actually peer reviewed. So that's satisfied, but they want to know what your plan is because it's impacting your treatment facility, and especially in Scituate. My understanding is that you had a visit from EPA and DEP recently, and there are concerns that you are so close to your permit limit. So they would have a say. I actually called and spoke with DEP because there was a lot of discussion about what DEP preferred. And their preference is that a low-pressure system goes in this area because it will immediately remove II. That's going to relieve pressure on your permit and keep you in permit compliance. So it all stems back to the permit compliance, but II is a huge impact to that. So yes, that's where they stand.
I think Karen's asking, when we start digging, is someone from DEP gonna come and look at that and say, you can't put that?
If it's gravel. If it's gravel. I don't think you don't need a sewer extension permit from DEP anymore. What they've done is they have given that jurisdiction to your local authority. So years ago, it used to be you needed a sewer extension permit in order to do anything like this. And probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they gave that authority to the town. So the town could speak for them. But technically, I think technically, if you look at, I know the question was asked at the selectmen's meeting, the last selectmen's meeting, if money wasn't an issue, and you had to come in and make a recommendation here, and I'm going to tell you, money isn't the issue. The issue is removing II. You know, when we're looking at a lot of issues around that, and if the focus is just to remove II, which is the need here, the recommendation would be a low-pressure sewer. Doesn't matter what the cost is, because that's going to immediately remove the II.
I have to believe that a gravity system is not gonna leak day one if we put it in there, and it's gonna resolve the II loss. I mean, I can see after 20 or 30 years that the gaskets are gonna leak, but I've gotta believe if we put a brand new system in, it's not gonna leak.
And again, speaking from the industry, if you look at an industry standard from Metcalf and Eddy, it's called TR16 in the design of sewer, you are mandated to add in an II faction day one. And what that is saying in the industry, that it is not guaranteed. So, you know, in a perfect world, it wouldn't leak. But the industry is telling you, there are other pipe manufacturers and whatnot in the industry. A sewer designer is going to add these numbers in right away because it is not guaranteed not to leak.
Any other questions from the board then?
No, that was great information.
Not right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna open it up to you guys for a little bit, and some of you had your hands up before. Ann, did you have something?
Yes. And or line 10 acres road. The reality here is, ladies and gentlemen, it's about the town. It's not just about Cedar Point. It's about all of us. We are a community. And getting the I&I out of our sewer treatment plant will enable those of us someday to hook up to sewer, maybe someday not. But we will be able to maintain our permit. We will be able to have some economic growth that we desperately need. Eventually, we will be able to tie into more Scituate. This is not just about Cedar Point, it's about all of us. It's about, as one woman said, it's about the common good.
We're doing the project one way or the other. so
I
it's-
understand that, but the best project here is the first, so that we.
What's the first, the low pressure
The
one?
low pressure, the $2.5 million grant from Mass Works, and what we have appropriated in town meeting. My tax dollars have paid over the years for lots of stuff for Cedar Point. I will continue to pay.
Just let her finish.
When you clear the road, when you clear the roads, when you do whatever to clean up Cedar Point, you know, it's all my tax dollars.
It's everyone's.
It's everyone's tax dollars. We are all in this together. So I think the low-pressure system, I could not agree more with our town administrator. He so eloquently put it. And I hope that the five of you, and hopefully Tony, you can understand that it is in the best interest of this town to go with a low-pressure system. Thank you.
In the back, Representative Karen?
First of all, thank you to the Board of Selectmen for hosting this meeting. Thank you for all letting your opinions be heard on this. As the state representative, I want to say that I was happy to talk to Secretary Keneally's office earlier this week to expand the language in the grant to allow for this discussion to happen. I want the board to have options, and that the reason that we're having this discussion is because the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Mike Keneally, is willing to change the scope of the grant to allow for the $2.2 million Mass Works grant to be spent on a gravity system. Now, I was just doing some math here on the study that we had conducted, and if the board was willing to spend the $2.5 million in the capital funds that was approved at town meeting, and the $2.2 million for the Mass Works grant, that to me comes out to $4.7 million, which was just $25,000 more than the low ball estimate for the gravity system. So there is a potential that there is no betterment fee for the residents if we spend the $2.5 million of the capital money, the $2.2 million in the Mass Works grant, and the cost comes in at what one of the figures that said in the study that the board had commissioned. Taking my rep hat off for a second, I also live on Cedar Point. I'm a resident. I stand here today with the residents, with my neighbors and friends. I think a gravity system would be best for the neighborhood. So, thank you. Good job.
Yes, sir. Yes.
David Moore, 64 and 65 Rebecca Road. The only two issues I have is maintenance means replacement of the unit. The other issue I have is that if an act of God, including flooding, goes over my property, the warranty on that unit is void. It's on their website.
I think we were told last time that it's going to be in a tight chamber or something that's going to...
Says it doesn't cover acts of God, including flooding.
No, but the chamber's going to be dry, right?
Yeah, it's watertight chamber.
It's a watertight chamber.
I just looked it up on their website.
What is it?
It does not cover acts of God, including flooding, electrical storms.
If the pump gets wet, we're talking about, right? Right, it's going to be in a water, what was the term you used?
A watertight chamber or vault or bunker.
It's going to be in some sort of watertight chamber that should not allow it to get wet.
It says, I guarantee.
So, I just want to add that you're absolutely right, that's what it says on the website, when it's not protected. When the town voted and I'm sure someone will correct me, they will correct me if I'm wrong. The town voted for 2.5 to pursue the pressurized system. They went out, did the engineering, did the design, taking into consideration the volatility of that installation, which is why it was designed with the double valves and the watertight container. I don't believe the one on Surfside has a watertight. I got flooded. But those were already put into the design of it as trying to mitigate some of the conditions that exist there as opposed to other places. So you have to look to the design of what was.
There's even an et cetera after what it says it doesn't cover, like to be determined. So the guy's going to say, oh, your pump failed, well, 6 months ago you had a flood. Sorry.
If you use olive oil, it can void the.
Well, the laundry detergent.
My friends in Cohasset had it.
When they tried it, was broken, they said, sorry, you used cooking oil, olive oil, in your...
So
and your warranty is voided. That's a fact.
Yes.
And I'm speaking just for myself. I refer to what the town administrator said, that I personally think that what the next conversation we need to have if we go with pressurized is to come up with some sort of, a Cedar Point remediation account, something, to understand that there are, it's gonna cost some somebody doesn't have a generator, you're gonna need one. Somebody is gonna have difficulty paying the electricity. There's a lot of different factors that truly will be, you know, we hear you, are gonna impact you. Are you gonna, you know, are you gonna forget and dump the salad dressing down and, you know, muck up the system? To me, it is much more financially responsible to the town to set up an appropriate amount of money that would be a remediation fund for the residents, because it's so important to get this I&I done. But we hear you, and I would like to propose that at some point, but to me, to not do that, the system that we know will work, that we can afford, doesn't make sense. When I think there are other ways to address the very real concerns. I know it'd be easier not to worry about it, but, you know, just as Mara said about septic, you get a septic that fails, you gotta deal with it. I wanna find other ways to deal with it in the most responsible way that takes the I&I out so the town benefits.
But the septic, that guy doesn't tell you that your warranty is void if it rains. You know what I'm saying?
I
You know what I'm
acknowledge
saying?
there are
Yeah.
specific things to this proposal that need to be worked out, but I think that if we can identify those things and set aside enough money that is appropriate to the problem and appropriate to the solutions, that the other, I mean, it's pros and cons on each of these systems, obviously, that will help me get my head around the change to your systems.
Did you have?
No, I was going to do the same point of clarification with the chamber things.
Ma'am, oh, no, sorry, one
Hi,
first turn,
thank you,
then.
Tony. It's Martine Costello from 62 Rebecca Road. So what about, I talked to our insurance agent today, and he said that it would be potentially another $500 a year for a rider to cover sewer backup and water backup into the house. And again, I have a friend who had the system in Cohasset, and she had numerous problems, not just one or two, but it happened frequently. And they ended up removing the system and making them hook back up into the town.
So the rider is, they want to know which one of the two types of systems you have, and you don't have to
No,
pay
if I
for it.
want to get a coverage for sewage backing up into my house because of these new grinders, it will cost me another $500 a year.
So just so we can clarify, the sewer can back up from a gravity one also. So if the pump fails in Sand Hills, it could happen.
Like it did at Wilden.
With this, if I remember you correctly, it really can't back up. But aren't there two check valves that are going to stop it from going back into the house?
Yes, I'd be very confused what the insurance company's getting at there, because this has extra safeties to prevent a backup. Gravity system can back up very readily.
Electricity.
Right, I think the insurance agents asked, the question is, can I get coverage for backup? Regardless
And
of
it's
what the
more
backup
for
is.
us to do that.
And it
If
would
we
cost
lose our
more,
power,
just like we all
it's
have to
likely
pay
that we will
flood
have
insurance.
backup.
Regular flooding
To the-
is cheaper.
To the Cedar Point, I'm sorry.
It's less expensive to get sewer backup insurance for a gravity system than it is for this system. Our insurance company would ask specifically which type of system you have, and they'll charge us more if we have that one.
Well, I would go back to my thought of the remediation. That maybe that's something we put in aside, you know? It's a whole lot more cost effective to help people with those bills than to, I disagree with the rep. I think that the delta's going to be more than the monies we have available if we go with the gravity. But to the Cedar Point question, if I'm not mistaken, they are in the process of replacing their 20 years old.
Do you need Cohasset?
Cohasset. Cohasset's pumps, they put in, the original ones 20 years ago. So they're in the process of their normal.
My friend
lifespan
replaced her
replacement.
system several times, and she said it was pretty
Before the
expensive.
20 years.
I don't know about her. I mean, obviously that can
It's just
happen.
one, like, we are living in, we're trying to figure out the operations of this possibility. So I think what's happening, what I hear, is we're making a lot of generalizations because we're all doing our independent pump research, right? I think what some of us are forgetting is that this is a specific design
There are extra check valves that are in this particular pump system. There is an extra chamber because it's being buried in a flood area that may not necessarily apply to a Cohasset system, which is built because of ledge and not necessarily because of tide. So I caution all of you and even myself, right? Because I've been out there too on every website. I've looked a lot of the data that some of the residents have sent me. We're not engineers and equipped to look at this. We can read it, we can interpret it, but we're not necessarily doing an apples to apples comparison from a system in Cohasset to the system that's designed here, because this was specifically designed for Cedar Point on the ocean and flooding. So that's all I ask, is that we're pulling all this stuff out of the air, and we don't really know what we're talking about. We're going to rely on our engineering consultants, on our DPW, on people at the state and EPA and DEP are telling us to make this decision. So I just caution us in all of us, right, with some of these comparisons that we're throwing out there for everybody to hear, because they're not necessarily apples to apples. I'm not saying it's not a concern, but it's not necessarily an apples to apples comparison.
Can I just follow up then? Because I go back to the first thing I said when this happened. The gravity system was invented by the Romans 2,000 years ago. There are no moving parts. It works. We know that it works. And it's going to stay, the iodide should be fine for another 50 years. You say we're going to, but the low pressure system has a lot of questions. We all have to agree. There's many questions, and now the representatives are saying we may have to have some type of discussion to come over those issues. So we know one works. It's going to work for 50 years. It's the oldest system known to man. Now we're bringing in a whole different system that we still have questions about, with lots of moving parts, things that can break, and we're in a very fragile area. Not like Sand Hills, not like Cohasset, and also not like Oceanside. So we also have a very different footprint for many of the houses on our neighborhood. Some houses have literally no space around it. I don't know where you're going to fit a tank. Oceanside has specific lots. I think they're half acre minimum out there. So some of the lots in our area are a tenth of an acre. So we know one system has worked for 2,000 years since the Romans invented it. And now we have this new one. We know that some of these new things may not necessarily work the way we want them to or expect them to. And that's, I think you're making our point for us when you say that. So that's all I want to say.
The only thing, I mean, you said a few general things that aren't quite right. There is moving parts. It's just not at your house. It's out at a pump station. It doesn't work. It's going to leak, and we know it's going to leak. And it's going to leak much sooner than the other one. And I'm not saying one way or the other. I just want to get the facts right. And we know that this one's leaked at least for 20 years. So, and part of that is because where you live. You get hit with storms, and the pipes get moved, and the tide moves it up and down, and it's in more of a friction area than other parts of town that a gravity system may be more stable. So again, as I think Karen said, there's pluses and minuses for both of them. The minus is you got a new component, you got a motor that you're relying on that
puts a lot of burden on us.
That could have problems.
It does.
Let me say something.
What about the
Oh, I'm going to go to you after Sean's speech. I did see you.
A gravity system, which you're putting in today, is not what's in the ground now, all right? So the PVC pipe is, it has rubber gaskets. And I was talking to a big contractor who does this, SPS, okay? And it will leak down the road. But I agree with you. I find it hard to believe it will leak from day one, and I know they probably have to account for some. You know, maybe not everyone installs the sewers correctly, all right? But we keep talking about, 20, the pipes have been leaking for 20 years. That's a clay pipe. And it's fragile, it breaks, it splits. It's not PVC. It's just a lot different. So, yeah, I wish it was on a roll, and I wish it was something that could be continuous or fused together. But it's not. So, I mean, I look at the pipe that Cohasset, Dredge, Cohasset Harbor with. They fused that together. Granted, they put it out in the ocean. to pump all the sand up to the sandy beach. So I don't think it's as fragile and start leaking as some people might think. Plus the fact, and I've said this a number of times over the week, I don't know if I want to be the contractor installing it. There'd be so many people watching over it to make sure it's done right, or, you know, that just, I just think we're not giving enough credit for what these contractors can do. And if you had if you set it up specifically, that you wanted 2 crews going, they start at Lighthouse Point, one goes down Lighthouse, one goes down Rebecca, and they meet at the neck. It happened pretty fast.
I'm sorry, the one you had earlier about this.
Christine Hannon from 84 Lighthouse Road. You brought up one of the topics that I wanted to bring up, which is the size of a lot. And where is the placement of this pump tank? Because we have, if it's got to be towards the road, we've got nothing except for a garden. You're going to take our garden and our parking away from us? There's no, if it's in the back of the house, it's a big, long connection to get it to the road. So that's my question. How big is this thing, and where does it have to be in the lump?
Yep, I'll take this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is in our specs for when these do get installed, for the contractor to reach out and work with the homeowner and for a location of the pumps or chambers. Excuse me. We have a rough layout indicating where we think these might fit in, but again, we're going to reach out to the homeowners for the exact location, try to locate them in the most ideal place for everyone. These will be located underground, so the area where it goes in will be disturbed, but then will be restored back to grade. You could put a driveway on top of it. The covers of this are H25 load, are rated for H25 loading. Again, you can park a truck on top of it, a large vehicle on top of it. It can take impacts from storm debris, so it can be in your driveway if you'd like. You could put a garden on top of it if you'd like. There's a lot of options here.
How big is it? Is it like 3 by 3?
Is it 46 inches?
Typical manhole cover, right?
It'll be a 30-inch cover on the top, or how big is
So, just so you heard, it goes underground, and it can go under your driveway, and there'll just be like a manhole cover on top of it, or you could put it on your lawn, and you could put soil on top of it.
This is the tiniest little house.
Do you have a little driveway?
No.
Can it go far away? Could it go in the back of somebody's property, and does it have to be in front?
It could be located, it could be located in the public way. If done as a town project, it could be located in the public way.
Okay, so maybe that would, on some properties, maybe it would be in the street.
We do have to watch out for the water main, which is one. Yeah.
Okay. I see one, I'm just gonna let him, and then you are
I'm
next.
fine the way it is with us.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Sean. I find it very difficult to believe that in this day and age, they can't install a pipe that's not going to leak. There are pipes from Boston out into Boston Harbor, sewage pipes. They're underwater. They don't leak all the time. There are liquid natural gas pipes that are all underwater. They don't seem to leak. And the PCP pipes that Sean recommends or has told you about, they're totally different than an old cement pipe that's been there for 50 years. I would also point out that would you really want your driveway on top of this? And then if something goes wrong with it, you're going to tear up your driveway?
The top just comes off.
Good. That's under the driveway.
So your driveway would have like a lane covered.
Like a manhole.
Yeah. All right. And yet we got, as far as I can understand from the figures, we already is available $4.5 million for either system. That goes a long, long way to cover the cost. It would more than cover the cost of the pump system, and it almost covers the entire cost of the gravity system. In addition, I haven't heard anybody talk about that these pumps are all going to have to be replaced. after 15 or 20 years. And that's going to be on the town also, so that should be factored in on the cost back. I know this was mentioned before, but it wasn't mentioned tonight, so I'd just like to point that out.
Joanne Ball of 44 Rebecca Road. And I do want to say one thing. You're talking about flooding. Rebecca Road is more than flooding. It's usually 4 feet of stone or more. And in the bend where you have a lot of problems. And every storm, when we've gone out, we have to walk back in because the road is not cleared. This year it was cleared faster. But I'm just saying to you, it's not water that's going to do the damage. You have houses that are up on stilts. The rocks from the beaches are going to push over, they're going to snap those pipes on those houses that are up on stilts off, and then you're going to get raw sewage coming back in. I don't care whether you got shut-off valves or not. It's going to cause a problem with all the houses that are on stilts.
That's a point I hadn't thought of. How do you handle that?
Again, the actual equipment is housed in a bunkered shelter. The issue with houses on stilts is an issue with gravity sewer as well. They still have that vulnerable pipe location. The key difference is in this scenario, if the low pressure system, if that vulnerable pipe were to be struck and broken, it would only go into the pump chamber during a power outage event and wouldn't inundate the entire sewer system. Should this scenario occur with the gravity system, the ocean would become one with the gravity system, inundate the system, and cause backup system-wide, perhaps failures at sand hills.
Did you get, Mr. Ball, so it doesn't matter what system it is, if there's a pipe hanging out of a...
Well, what about the vent pipe that's going to come up? If that's clogged with rocks and everything, what are you going to do about that snaps off and is clogged?
It just goes into your pump.
Let me answer.
Yeah, the vent pipes are being specially designed. We're looking into venting them through the existing vent stack at the properties. In cases where that's not possible, we're using a metal vent stack with a check valve to prevent waters or rocks from going into it. Much more durable than PVC. It's metal.
Tom Gallagher, 55 White House Road. Is there any way to hone in a closer estimate on the gravity system? I mean, how did you get that number that you're using? Who gave you that number?
How do we get that, Jim? I know.
So the gravity sewer, that's basically a baseline price at capital cost. We called multiple contractors to give us costs based on this location. So you're looking at insurance adders because there'll be an additional OSHA. You're looking at a much deeper pipe, probably plate supports. It's a lot more risk involved for a contractor. And I believe we reached out to 3 contractors, including the one that has bid in the town. And none of them were willing to give us the cost of that without actually...
So nobody will give you...
She got estimates from 3 contractors that was the best that we could get.
Is that available? Are those people available for, I mean, is that public information, those contractors?
I don't know, we could probably get them, but that's the best we have.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had a question for Sean, and I don't know if he's prepared to answer. Sean, we did depths like this in Greenbush?
Pretty.
Right, so you don't know what it was per foot per mile?
No,
Because I had that question written down.
yeah, I could pull the old bed, that's for sure, and
Yeah, all right, okay.
see what, pick a deep elevation.
Right.
So I'm going to ask the board if they're ready to vote or if there's more discussion that's needed.
Well, I would like to see an honest temperature of the room, knowing that, just from a raising hand, if you're so inclined. If, we could work through the pressure system, power outage, and some of the, issues that that are all concerned to all of us, right? We can work through that piece. Is that something that you're willing to move forward with? Or are you more at, you got to know that we don't have an exact cost for the gravity system. Let's just put it out there, right? It's an estimate. That's a ballpark. It could be $40,000 betterment to you, it could be a 30, it could be a 50. We don't know, and I'm not inclined to wait for that exact estimate to make a decision, because we have to have an eye-on-eye solution. So I would like to know really just the temperature in the room, and how many people in this room are really willing to pay for that delta above the 2.5 and the 2.3, so the 4.8 million that's already allocated. Knowing that it could be another million, it could be another 2 million, it could be another 3 million, that would be the betterment that they would have to take on as homeowners.
Unfortunately, I think this whole group wants the gravity in their, they said yes to $40,000 last
I
time.
don't know, I hear
We can
people bring up other concerns, I don't think that's a fair assessment.
All right, so if you could just raise your hand if you do not mind paying a betterment for some amount above the 2.2 and $2.5 million for the fee to build a gravity system in your neighborhood. So let's say it's going to be $40,000. Like it's another $3 million. If you can just raise your hand. I tell you what, raise your hands if you're not. If you don't want to pay the excess betterment, that could be anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000 to put a gravity system in.
Some of those costs are time.
You're asking us to make a vote on something that you don't know what the number is.
Right.
But isn't it fair to the taxpayers or us as homeowners?
Ms. Curtis is trying to get a sense of the board.
temperature.
It's already done. Nobody raised their hand.
There's no betterment because it's $4.7 million, I'm raising my hand. But if you're saying it's going to be, look, I know how the town can do their math. And
I don't know what you mean by that.
Yeah, just say those.
I can tell you exactly what I mean by it, but.
Go ahead.
I'd rather not.
No, what do you
No,
mean?
go ahead.
I'm at a meeting a couple of months ago. We dropped $10 million on athletic fields. You talk about
Okay.
putting a
So
concession stand.
I'm going to stop you there because you don't know what you're talking about.
No, I didn't.
There were 20 meetings about athletic fields and it was a town meeting that voted in
But
favor
I'm
of it.
bringing up one point, please. And that was, you talk about a concession stand, and it was $600-something thousand. That was $1,000 a square foot to build a concession stand. It was 600 square feet. That's crazy. And my point is that how do we
Well,
know?
let's go back to your point, and then I know I'm being a jerk here, but we said no to that.
I know that, but they proposed, and it was tabled that we wanted to spend that kind of money on a concession stand. Thankfully, John said something, like, wait a second, this is crazy, too much money. My point is that you're asking us to vote on something that we don't know what the number is.
Right.
Right.
But can I just add that?
Isn't fair. We should know what the
I
number
know.
is.
You guys voted, we get it. You guys will pay for the extra. Yes.
Can I just make a comment about it? To the same point though, we are voting on a system. Also, we have to decide which system without knowing that amount. We could get lucky and it costs the amount of the money we have available. But it could be what, we have experts that have given us a range. So maybe it's only, another million, or whatever, we find lots more water, whatever. The point is, we are gonna have to decide, if we do that, we're gonna be passing any extra on to you, not knowing that number. I personally am very uncomfortable with that, because what happens if, and it's not funny math, but let's say the contractor goes in and goes, holy cow, I need to reinforce this by $1 bazillion in order to install this thing. I don't know, I'm not an engineer.
That's my fear.
But it could happen. It could happen, and then you don't have any choice. You just got burdened with that. I'm not comfortable doing that to this community, just from a finance standpoint. I understand all the other concerns.
And I agree with you.
Could I just ask, if the
I'm gonna stop you guys one second. I'm just gonna
just as a point of reference, when we were here a couple of weeks ago, some numbers were thrown out on the gravity system, and we took a $44,000 betterment. And again, I would consider that baseline on a gravity system that we still would need to add insurance and risks and whatnot. So under Mass General Law, when you do a betterment, it's 5% interest. To look at $44,000 over 20 years at 5% is roughly $291.70 a month. So it's almost $3,600 a year in betterment payments. At the end of 20 years, the total payments is $70,000. That's just a point of reference if you were going to finance the 44.
The equivalent of 20 pumps per month.
20 pumps.
20 pumps.
That didn't include the 2.5, did it?
No, I'm just saying, point of reference if people are talking about a betterment amount.
So, does anybody else up here need more discussion?
Would you let Michelle Warren?
Possibly, yep. So,
Yeah, I'm happy to have
What
Michelle.
I would like to say is that we can't delay this any longer. And if we can't get agreement in this room tonight, that if you really want that gravity system, even though the engineers are telling us that's not the way to go, but if you're willing to pay whatever that betterment turns out to be, I don't want to be in a situation where all of a sudden everyone is saying, well, we didn't think it was going to be that much. I mean, that's where we are right now. And this started 2 or 3 years ago, and we're still going around and around and around. And I have to be honest with you, I wake up at night, and if I'm not thinking about sewers, I'm thinking about brown water. You know, because it's a very complicated problem, and we understand how you all feel, but we have to decide tonight, I believe. And if you really want us to decide on a gravity system, we have to have some assurance, and I'm going to be on TV saying it, that people in this room said that this is what they want. Now, I don't know if you speak for all of Cedar Point, but that's what we would be deciding tonight.
I'm going to let you wrap up the discussion.
I just want to talk to some of the points that some people have made. I'm not an engineer either, but I do try to get to things from engineers and other people. Well, first, I want to make it clear that I've spoken to an engineer at the Department of Environmental Protection. There is nothing wrong with putting in a gravity sewer. They're not going to come down and swoop down and say, wait a minute, stop, don't put in the sewer you have. They're not going to say that. They have told me that there's plenty of gravity sewers, deep sewers, made from PVC pipe, the new pipe, and they're fine. This woman sitting in the middle, her own study, I'm going to read from her study.
I'm going to ask you not to, because sometimes that's taken out of context, and if you don't read the whole thing, you probably read it last time too, and I don't think it's going to impact our decision. So say your piece, but just don't, because I got comments last time when I read it that that's not really what it was interpreted to be.
Well, it says a complete replacement, and I pointed this out, a complete replacement with the gravity would expect to reduce the amount of I&I to near zero using gasketed pipe rated for pressure and linking type seals at manhole connections. That's what it says. And I didn't change a word from it, and I didn't take it out of context. That's what the evaluation was.
Does it say in an ideal situation?
It doesn't say in an ideal, no. It says they're talking about this gravity sewer here. It doesn't say.
So right now, just talk to us in our points that may make something stick with one of us.
When you asked the other gentleman from Woodward and Kerner, one of the selectmen did, they said, well, how long will the seals last? And he said, because they are seals, I can't guarantee it, but I wouldn't expect a problem for 50 years. And he went on for quite a while explaining why there wouldn't be a problem. They should be tested once every 10 years, but he didn't expect to see any leaks in this deep gravity system for 50 years. The, there's very little maintenance. People have been referring to this as a Cadillac system. It's not a Cadillac, it's an ideal system.
That was,
Okay? There's check valves, redundant check valves. The reason there's redundant check valves is because the check valves can break. Well, a redundant check valve can break too. You got a valve and a valve can break. These valves too are only on the side of the pump, as I understand it, I could be corrected, that are from the main into the container that the person's house is hooked up to. There's no check valve between the sewer, the toilets and the tubs and everything from the house go into the pit. So what happens is when it fills up, there can be backups coming back from that. There was a huge backup in Florida because of Hurricane Irma, and this particular town had pumps from E1. This is in 2017.
But that's a
This is-
different system. It's not a grinder pipe system,
It was in,
not in
in,
Vero Beach.
no, not Vero Beach. This is another one.
All right. Well, that's the one that you're talking about, I just want to make sure that's different.
This is a hurricane incident that occurred in Everglades City. Everglades City is a city down there, and it had all grinder pumps from E1. And we're talking 2017 now, installed by E1. When they lost power because of the storm, there was a huge backup all over the streets, into the houses, and what happened is the storm water came into the houses and then removed the sewage from the houses and put it into the streets. There was fecal contamination so severe it was beyond measurement, and local officials responded to dozens of residents that had health concerns. 5 days after the storm, there was no working bathroom, and residents were forced to pile waste in makeshift outhouses. The private company that installed the pumps in Everglades City, E1, their spokesman in New York, Shane, said that most systems would fail and flood during an event like Irma. He could not elaborate on what mechanisms the pumps have in place to prevent widespread contamination. So Will's talking about check valves, two of them because one can break, that prevents the sewage from the main coming into the person's container, but there isn't any check valve the other way. I have a whole thing here, I know you don't want to hear it, so these were primary things that I wanted to try to say. That the sewer system, deep gravity, it will reduce our now. It'll reduce it for a long time with very, very little maintenance, looking at it once every 10 years. Not like these pumps. These pumps, everybody says, even the manufacturer says, they're going to break down, they're going to fail 15 to 20 years. That's the people that made it. And the price of this system is going to be almost as much as the estimates for the deep sewer right now. Someone's going to be paying those costs, and there's probably going to be more.
okay. I'm gonna, did you have a last comment about it?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was just doing some numbers real quick. Even if the estimates were $2 million on top of the 4.7, that even with the betterment fee assessed to the residents over 20 years, it would be like $90 a month as opposed to 290 earlier. So even if the project was $2 million more than the estimate in the study that was conducted, it would only be about a $16,000 betterment, not a $44,000 betterment.
I don't know if you had interest in there, but just math, yeah, it would be, so a $3.6 million betterment is $42 million. So a $2 million betterment is probably going to be somewhere around low 20s, I would think. Somewhere around. Yeah. Okay. So before we vote, and I have no idea where this is going to end up, I want to thank you guys for coming in and participating in the process. We're trying to do what's best for the town. We're trying to do what we think is best for you. And, you know, I just appreciate the respect you pay to the process and you coming in and participating. That being said, Can I have a motion from somebody on, actually, hold on. Do I have language for, what are we doing here?
Yeah, but the
It's in the
language is
packet
for
in front of you.
recording of contracts.
I printed it out.
Well, I mean, the board just has to vote, be a simple vote whether they want to proceed with the low-pressure sewer system.
Okay.
If the answer to that is yes, then you have a motion to award the contract for the system. If the answer is no, then it's back to the drawing board and we start all over again.
And may I ask a question? to
Yeah.
that? I would just, I think you said it in the beginning, Jim, but if the board goes towards a gravity system solution, where does that put us timing to be, I understand that we're shovel ready for low pressure. What's our timing for gravity?
At least a year.
Like another, meaning can't break ground till next August?
We would have to design it, we would have to go back to town meeting to fund it in April. Given the nature of this construction, and I don't want to speak for the residents, but I don't think anybody wants us digging a 14-foot trench on Rebecca Road in June, July, August, or September. So you're talking, you're talking next year.
That's fine.
You said you didn't want us to start this project in the summertime, and this project is nowhere near as invasive as that project's going to be.
Your point is, want this project.
Okay. Thank you.
You're talking a year.
A year of when our septic system is right up against the brink of,
Yeah, roughly.
I have just a question about the motion. I had sort of floated the idea that if we go with a pressurized system, there's two things that I think we have to be prepared to commit to, is to engage in a remediation bank of some sort, negotiation with appropriate representatives. I think some monies need to be set aside for the legitimate hardships that this could present. So I know
does anyone have a
we don't
problem
know
with that?
No, we don't know the details of it, we don't know what the amount is, but I would like the board to publicly commit to that should we go with a pressurized system. The other thing I would like, regardless of which system, is that we instruct, and this is probably not a vote thing, but I would like to instruct the town administrator to update our emergency management plans to ensure that residents' homes are a priority in emergency storms as appropriate to the system. So if, for example, if we end up voting for a pressurized system, we make sure that all those checklists, which all the emergency first responders have, know to, I don't know what it is, take a look at the generator lights, do, whatever it is, to incorporate that into our checklists and balances to make sure that happens. I think that should happen regardless of which system, but those two things, I don't know if they need to be incorporated, but I'd like to have that.
So the board just said yes to your first one, the second one.
It's going to happen, it's in a recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just say one thing about the timing, to Jim's answer to Mara's question? If the board votes for the low-pressure system, Robert Allen said they'll honor the price, but here we are coming into the fall. Do you think they'll be taken before the spring?
Yeah. I think it's started, yeah, they're not busy right now, they're ready to go. It's a good time to start, because most people are wrapping up. So yeah, I think they'll be starting before the spring. Did you have any conversation with them?
Yeah, ideal. Just a quick question.
What if we had a storm during that construction? What would that do to that? Be a disaster?
No, like any job, the contract would button up, move out, and
You're moving water going across a torn-up road that's now dirt. It's gonna be gone.
did it on Oceanside. Did it on Oceanside.
Okay, do you guys need a minute to figure out, get your mindset, or are you good? All right, if someone's good, make a motion.
I move that the Board of Selectmen award the contract for construction services for Cedar Point Improvement Project to Robert E. Orr for...
Well, we're just going to say
Point of order.
proceed with the project.
Oh, okay, that's right, 2 seconds.
Which way
You did say that, sorry.
If you go for that, you're doing the same thing, but either way, it's fine.
Okay, true, cut out the, let's keep the middleman in. Move that the Board of Selectmen approve proceeding with the pressurized sewer system And that the board further agrees to immediately enter into discussion about a remediation fund to address resident concerns. Does that work? Second.
Second? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
So it's 3-2 against. So,
I would take a stab at another motion.
no. Jim, what do we do? So we did not vote in favor.
I told you we should do it.
Yeah,
We didn't listen.
We didn't vote in favor of it. It lost 3-2.
Then I would probably just have another motion to instruct the DPW to proceed with design of a gravity system.
May I ask a question for discussion? How do we pay for design and engineering?
Come out of 2.5 million.
It comes out of 2.5, okay.
Mhm.
I moved that we instruct the DPW to start designing a gravity system for Cedar Point.
Second by Ms. Conley, further discussion?
The DPW does not recommend proceeding with the gravity system.
Want to be on the record.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 3-2. Okay, so moving right along.
I'd like to stay for wine and malt lights. Yeah, as it passes.
Thank you.
Motion. Move the Board of Selectmen open the warrant for this fall special town meeting to be held on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019.
Second.
Second by Ms. Canfield, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye, it's unanimous. Can I have a motion for the one-day wine and malt license?
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Simply Serving 2 LLC for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on August 24, 2019, from 1 to 5 p.m. And that the, can we do both?
Let's see, second by Mr. Harris, further discussion, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Reba for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on August 31st, 2019, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris, further discussion, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Any liaison reports?
Quickly, CPC voted last night to transfer the $100,000 to the Affordable Housing Trust that we approved at town meeting in the spring. And since we haven't done that transfer in many, many, many years, Nancy asked that CPC simply approve it. So, and they just had a pretty routine meeting last night. The Water Resources Committee has voted on a metering policy. I suggested to the chair that she get in touch with Lorraine to get on the board schedule, board selectment schedule. I don't think she's done that yet, but that's what I told her she should do. And tomorrow there's a focus group on the Scituate Harbor Resiliency Committee that I will be attending in the chair's stead, because the chair is working, I think. So, that's what I have to say.
Okay. Anyone else?
The Master Plan Community meeting was held, hosted by the Planning Committee, and I just wanted, it was excellent, and Brad and Washburn and Karen Joseph did a great job with the facilitator. There will be opportunities, I think 4 more public meetings to have people have input, and all the data that was collected at that meeting is available online, and the process is really interesting, so that's going. And the planning board met and discussed the senior center, and there are still many outstanding issues they're not comfortable with, so I believe September 26th they'll be reconvening on that. And the planning board has issued a page of unanswered questions to the OPM on that project, which hopefully will be
and certify the 26th.
Great. I was at that meeting, it was a good turnout. It'll get done. Anything else? Okay, moving right along, correspondences.
Just a couple of things. The Division of Marine Fisheries has sent a letter to our attention announcing small grant program to improve recreational fishing access is now open, and the bid information is available online or through the Selectmen's office. National Grid has sent to the chair a letter that says that they're going to be improving, they're going to be trimming trees and stuff. And we should be aware of it because they have a right way to do it, but they're letting us know they're coming to town to do that. And you can look on their website to see
Do
exactly.
we post those streets, or do we do
Sean
that?
McCarthy's working on it.
And I think that's it. That's it.
Great. Approval minutes?
Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot something very, very important.
Yep.
Town Touch It, a Truck Day is coming on August 30th from 9 to 12 at Town Hall. It's super duper fun, and the halfway to St. Patrick's Day fundraiser for Scituate, for the Scituate Student Exchange is Saturday the 14th at the Scituate Beach Association, starting at 7 o'clock. And the tickets are available on Eventbrite or through the Sister City Facebook page. Now I'm done.
May I make one other comment about correspondence?
Yep.
We had on our mailboxes a really nice letter from a family who was sailing and their boat broke down, and a really nice letter about the service of our harbor master and the staff that's there and how well they treated the gentleman who was injured, how they helped him come to his mooring, and he sails all along the East Coast, and he thought that the Scituate Harbor Master's office was one of the best and most cordial that he has come across in a while. And so I thought that was a great compliment.
Yes.
Situate's a big harbor, and we have a lot of transients, so I just want to say thank you to our fabulous harbor master staff. They certainly performed well this summer. Anyways, it was fun.
Great.
Shout out to them.
Approval minutes?
Move to accept the minutes from the August 6, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris, further discussion, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. And can I have a motion to adjourn and sign documents?
So moved. Second.
Second by Mr. Harris, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous. Thank you very much.